Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the County Council's Tuesday, September 21st session. We begin this morning with a proclamation recognizing Peace Day in honor of the remarkable life of Maddie J.T. Stepanix and life and legacy. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and good morning to all. I'm very pleased to be joined by several people this morning to receive this Peace Day proclamation. Over the summer, I had the pleasure to attend the Peace Day celebration in honor of Maddie Stepanix. Peace Day is an annual event held on Maddie's birthday, July 17th, in Rockville. And this year it was held at the Maddie J.T. Stepanix Park in King Farm. Maddie was good friends with Oprah Winfrey, and she actually attended the park dedication in Rockville back in 2008. She has said that Maddie was one of the most memorable guests on her show. Maddie's life may have been brief, but it left a lasting impact. He is known for his beautiful collection of poetry and his award-winning work as a peace ambassador. Peace Day is an opportunity for all of us to reflect on the importance of the lessons we've learned from Maddie. This morning, I'm extremely honored to be joined by my friend, Jenny Stepanix, who's also known as Mama Peace. I want that to be known, who will be sharing a few words about the life and legacy of her son. And then I'm going to read a proclamation that will also explain some of the wonderful work that Maddie has done. Jenny, wherever you are, please join us.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councilman Katz. And thank you to all of the Montgomery County Council for your loyal support of something that really matters to you, matters to us, and we need to role model this so that it matters to all of the citizens of this county and this country. As you know, our Peace Day celebration on Maddie's birthday is part of a national campaign for a peace day for our country. And I think it's fitting that the actual proclamation is coming today, which is the International Day of Peace. I mean, so how ironic. The International Day of Peace, the mission of that, or the focus of that, is to pause violence for 24 hours, which is a noble and necessary cause. I mean, we must pause violence. But the mission and goal of the National Peace Day, of Maddie's Peace Day, is to not just pause violence, but to give people something to replace violence, to give people an understanding of what peace is and how it's possible, to bring people together, to connect, to have conversations, and to celebrate peace so that we get to know our neighbors. So it's easier to tend to and balance global needs, so that it's easier to be kind to people and to not judge people and to respect people, even if we disagree with them, even if we are not like them, even if we don't like them. We don't have to hate someone to hurt someone through a word or an action, or a lack of a word or a lack of an action. So this Peace Day that's celebrated in Maryland near Maddie's birthday is very important to Maddie's Foundation. I have our executive director and treasurer, Laura Bauer, and Barry McConaughey are also on this Zoom session. It's important to us, and we thank you for your year after year support of this as we move forward and hopefully one day do achieve a National Day of Peace, simply a presidential proclamation. It's that simple. We need to make peace something that matters to our country. But along the way, we thank you for this. And I do want to mention, Sydney, that when you came to the event this summer, we were recording little bits of that. And we did an hour-long Heart Song and Peace Day proclamation celebration that's now a video that's posted on Maddie's website. So you and some of the members of the City Council are part of that video, along with Oprah Winfrey and Jimmy Carter. For any of you who want to travel, we celebrate Peace Day. We want the National Day on Maddie's birthday so that it's anchored to someone that took the abstract concept of peace and made it something achievable and understandable, and a pathways to peace and unity and community game plan. But we celebrate it in Maryland near his birthday. Next week, around Jimmy Carter's birthday, we'll be celebrating Peace Day down here in Americus in Sumter County. So if anybody wants to join us, please come. But thank you so much for everything that you do for peace.
Thank you very much, Mama Peace. And with that, I'm going to read a proclamation. Whereas Maddie J. T. Stepanek, born on July 17, 1990, was an American poet, ambassador of goodwill, and advocate for peace, all while living with a debilitating genetic neuromuscular disease that ultimately took his life on June 22, 2004, just before his 14th birthday. And whereas by the age of 3, Maddie began celebrating hope and happiness by creating poetry he referred to as heart songs, which are expressions of inner purpose that connect humanity in positive ways. And whereas Maddie spent his life inspiring millions of diverse global neighbors with his vision and mission of hope and peace, sharing it on television and speeches, and in 7 award-winning New York Times best-selling books of poetry and peace essays, while grieving the loss of his 3 siblings and facing his own health challenges. And whereas Maddie believed that peace is possible, peace is for all people, peace can be taught, and peace begins with deliberate choices in attitude and action, reminding us that we are a mosaic of gifts to remember to play after every storm. And whereas Maddie encouraged us to understand that peace is not about having to agree with their neighbors, but choosing to be with their neighbors in nonviolent and non-judgmental ways, promoting respect and kindness. And whereas to recognize and honor Maddie's contributions in 2014, a congressional resolution was passed to support the Maddie J.T. Stepanek Foundation's National Peace Day campaign to have Maddie's birthday annually proclaimed as a day to learn about and celebrate peace. And whereas to commemorate his life and legacy, a 26-acre namesake park and playground with a statue and peace garden was created in 2008 in his King Farm neighborhood, and the city of Rockville collaborates with Maddie's Foundation to annually celebrate Maddie's Peace Day in July. Now therefore be it resolved that the County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland hereby proclaims July 17th, 2021 as Peace Day in honor of Maddie J.T. Stepanek's life and legacy of peace, which continues to gently shape our world with hope and goodwill. And it's signed today by Council President Tom Hucker and myself. Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you to the entire foundation for everything that you do. Thank you very much. And Mr. President, I turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Katz, and all of you. That was terrific. Next we will have a commemoration of Hispanic Heritage Month. On behalf of the entire County Council, I want to wish all of our Hispanic and Latino residents a wonderful Hispanic Heritage Month. According to the last census, the county is home. Oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember Katz, did you turn it back? Did I cut anybody off? Sorry, okay. According to the last census, the county is home now to over 200,000 residents that identify as Hispanic or Latino. We are so fortunate to live in an amazing county that continues to grow in diversity and cultural richness every year. Our Hispanic community is an integral part of that growth. We are so grateful for the vast contributions of all of our Hispanic and Latino residents. This is our 8th annual Hispanic Heritage Month commemoration. It was first organized by Councilmember Navarro as a way to honor community leaders in our area and highlight important issues impacting the Latino community. So it's fitting this year we're highlighting the Latino Civic Project, which is one of our county's most successful civic engagement projects at a time when civic engagement has never been more important. We have a great presentation in store today. I hope you all enjoy it. Let me turn it over to Councilmember Navarro. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. It's so good to see all these beautiful faces. This year, the national theme for the celebration is hope, esperanza. And I think it's very fitting given this very difficult 2020 as well as what has been 2021. But I think Esperanza, hope, just really encapsulates all the dreams and all the contributions of this extraordinary community. I first want to thank my staff, in particular, Berta Cersosimo and Mayra Cruz Solis, who have been extraordinary in giving life to this project from the inception, as well as our council's communication office, Sonia Hilly, Lilian Mas, we have Raul, we have Merchai, Susan, and Lucia, for helping put a very special video together. I want to also thank those of you who are here as guests joining us today. We have some of our civic ambassadors, Rosana Espinosa, Angelica Zaragoza, Monica Braden, Antonio Hernandez, Amarilis Castellón, Griselda Ventura, Justa Tosta, Fe Hernández, Elena Ruiz y Rolando López. Y espero que otras personas también estén aquí. We also have partner organizations. We have Carmen Hernandez for Impact Silver Spring, who has been also an extraordinary pioneer in helping shape this project. Maria Hernandez from the YMCA linkages at Joanne Luddick Elementary School. Nancy Lasso from Every Mind from linkages to learning at George and Forest Elementary School. Freddie Climaco, YMCA linkages to learning at Joanne Luddick Elementary School. And Ana Villalobos, also from YMCA linkages to learning at Joanne Luddick Elementary School. And so I wanted to share a little bit of the timeline. So as many of you have done over the years, I myself had met many times with parents from the Latino community who were interested in learning how to best support their students navigate the school system. And we would have these meetings periodically. And in 2011, after redistricting took place and I began to represent Wheaton, which is the epicenter of the Latino community in Montgomery County, we had a very robust conversation about the fact that parents, of course, were not just interested in how to support their students in the school system, but also wanted to learn about, how to advocate for better access to transportation, to transit, affordable housing, public safety in their communities, all of these issues, access to healthcare, all of these issues that we all take very seriously. And so a conversation began to see whether there could be a vehicle to learn how to keep track of all of these different issues and be able to participate in order to make a difference and affect the decision-making that all of the county leaders and state leaders had to undertake. This is a community that has grown in numbers, but as all of you know, had not necessarily been at the table. As a matter of fact, that was the primary reason why I ran for office in 2004, because as a Latino mom, I realized that my voice wasn't necessarily represented at that decision-making table. So we decided to figure out a way to launch a project that really was sparked through an awesome, very cool conference that we had in Ana Jimenez when it was located in Wheaton. And we began to think through what this could look like. I knew that it would be critical to hire somebody who could specifically work on this issue. And so I decided to use some of my office budget to hire Mayra Cruz Solis, who I had worked with before, and who is a natural organizer and understands this community very greatly. So we got really busy. We designed a curriculum, and we began to figure out how to then disseminate this extraordinary and important curriculum. So we started at Title I schools. We began to go to churches, apartment complexes, senior rec centers, and nonprofit organizations. And therefore, it just began. But of course, this could not happen unless we began to create cadres of community leaders. And that's exactly what occurred. And some of them are right here present. These are our ambassadors, because the idea was to have everybody go through the curriculum and then turn around and be ambassadors in their own communities and share the information and make sure that they could represent their community needs at public hearings or run for particular boards and commissions to have their voices heard as well. So you will probably see many of them as you navigate some of these other activities, the Black and Brown Coalition, the different Latino advisory groups at the school system or at the executive level. They are interspersed all around the county, making a difference. To date, we have 600 civic ambassadors who have gone through this curriculum. And as I said, you have heard them also bring testimony to the council. They've also gone to the Board of Education, Planning Board, Board of Elections, the county's Historic Preservation Commission, the county's Economic Development Department, and many other official forums. And they have testified on various policy areas and topics. And as I said earlier, they've taken a lot of different leadership roles. One of them that I'm really proud are the neighborhood civic associations. There are neighborhoods around our county that are majority Latino, but when you look at the civic association, you don't see their voices present. That has definitely begun to change, and that is really, really important. But also something as important as the MCPS new superintendent searches, they have been there present as well. Some of the specific things that you probably remember that they have advocated significantly and made an extraordinary difference was the Wheaton Library and Recreation Center design. And actually that green space would have never become a reality if it had not been for these civic ambassadors who took a front and center role to defend that green space. And this is why we have the design that we have today. This is an extraordinary achievement. The Glenman Fire Station design and park, it was because of them. Expansion of early voting centers. They were front and center, making sure the centers like the Mid-County Recreation Center, that was designated as a early voting center. And of course, passage of key pieces of legislation, such as the Child Care Expansion and Quality Enhancement Initiative, funding for key budget proposals, etc. And that's important because one of the things that we have done is that we've worked really hard. And sometimes we don't take credit for the things that we have done. And I think it's important for these ambassadors to be recognized publicly in all the quiet work and the very, very intense impact they have had. But I also want to talk a little bit about the structural changes that have occurred as a consequence of the Latino Civic Project. As you know, without creating the capacity within our systems, these efforts would absolutely be useless because we need not just for the community to step up, but our own internal structures have to be able to meet the community where they are. And this is why I'm so proud of the work that we have done collectively on this county council. It began way back when the Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee, I believe this was around 2012 or so, we created a legislative branch communications outreach non-departmental account. What that means is that we created a space where we can begin to fund incrementally every year. We could fund important components to enhance the capacity of our communications office to serve our multilingual and our extraordinarily multicultural communities. And what have we achieved? We've achieved a simultaneous translation unit. We have a weekly council Spanish language radio show. We have bilingual PIOs that serve the Latino community and the broad Asian community. And we also have a countywide Latino Civic Project Engagement Coordinator, which has been very important. And last but not least, I want to talk a little bit about the fact that during the pandemic, we also were front and center in advising the administration on how to reach all of these communities. And so we also suggested the creation of a WhatsApp and translation unit at the Office of Community Partnerships, which has been front and center in disseminating information during this crisis, and now is a permanent feature of the way that we communicate along the county. So that is an example of our institutions really looking to enhance the way that they meet our growing communities. And as I always say, we can no longer talk about the Latino community, our Black community, our Asian communities as niche populations. They collectively now are the majority of the population here in our county, which is something that we are so proud of because it really is true that diversity is our strength. And because of that, our institutions have to do whatever it takes to make sure that we can step up and meet the needs of all of our community members so they can be active participants. So now I'm going to turn it over to someone who also has been working on these issues for a long time. First in the executive side when he was the director of the Department of Recreation, where he also instituted some groundbreaking, very innovative initiatives to meet the needs of all of our community members. And of course, now as our vice president, Councilmember Gabriel Albornoz.
Hola, mi gente, and thank you so much, Nancy, for your leadership. I get to say this for at least one more Hispanic Heritage Month. Thank you for your steadfast leadership in so many ways. It's been an honor and privilege to serve beside you these last 3 years, and I'm happy I get to serve with you for at least one more. So this is obviously an important month. I'm going to start on a personal note because I think it is symbolic of all that we're celebrating this month. My grandmother, Guadalupe Albornoz, passed away earlier this year, and we are celebrating her funeral mass this Saturday. Like so many, we were not able to grieve in the way that we wanted to, and we wanted to wait to be able to celebrate with family from Ecuador, and waited until they were able to receive their vaccinations to be able to fly here so that we can celebrate her life and grief together. My grandmother was an extraordinary woman and lived 94 very full years. She was actually a college student in Ecuador when she met my grandfather, who was a visiting professor. So, she was a trailblazer in her own right. They settled here in the United States in White Oak, and she raised 8 remarkable children, 8 mocosos, who grew up to become medical doctors, lawyers, public officials, and just truly remarkable people and an inspiration to my cousins and I. And of course, there are the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren that include social workers, teachers, financiers, and a local elected official bringing up the rear. I am so proud of my family and the sacrifices that my family made to come here to the United States in keeping with the long tradition of our country. This month, we take a moment to celebrate the contributions in every corner of our society and our community by our Latino community, whether it's our economy, our culture, or just being able to come together as one community. This month also reminds us of what binds us together. And we are among the most recent immigrants to come to our country, coming in large numbers, as the council president just noted. And I am so proud of the accomplishments of our community to date, but I'm even more proud of what's to come. And it's because of initiatives like Proyecto Cívico that I have tremendous hope for our future. And so it is the absolute appropriate term for us to be able to note this month, because there is a great deal of hope. We had a record number of people testify before the council this year, and I loved how many requested language access and assistance. Many of them were trained through Proyecto Cívico. So among the many legacies that Councilmember Navarro will leave as a council member here and as a Board of Education member, this, I think, is among her greatest accomplishments and achievements. And she has done it with the extraordinary help of her team. And speaking of teams, I also want to acknowledge Lillian Cruz and Mayra Bayonet on my team, who do such an outstanding job every day, as all of our public officials do, and all of our frontline workers through this last year and a half, literally saving lives. So there is so much to celebrate this month, so much to bring us together, hope for our future. And I close with this before mentioning just a couple final things regarding Proyecto Cívico. One of the things that I got when my grandmother passed away was her Spanish English dictionary. This was something that she specifically wanted to make sure I had, which was appropriate because she would always call me after she saw me on interviews on Univision and Telemundo to correct my grammar and to make sure that I was representing the family well. I miss her tremendously, and I have had the opportunity to attend graduations of Proyecto Cívico, and I look so forward to their continued work. And I, for one, I promise you, Councilmember Navarro, will make sure that this project continues. and that it grows, and that we as a council do all that we can to support it and expand it to so many other communities that will benefit from its long-lasting traditions and history. So with that, I now turn it over to a video presentation describing the program and all that it has been able to accomplish over these last 10 years.
The need for drastic changes in the academic well-being of students of color was a point of discussion during a meeting organized by Councilmember Nancy Navarro with East County Latino residents during the summer of 2011. Prior to this meeting, work had been focusing on outreach and parental engagement strategies around education policies and programs within the public school system. However, these constituents were not only concerned about school issues, but many others, ranging from housing, transportation, land use, racial equity, public safety, economic and workforce development. Because these policy issues are interrelated and go beyond the jurisdiction of the school system, leadership and advocacy training was a clear need. Doing so was not an easy task. Towards that end, Councilmember Navarro established the Latino Civic Project in District 4, a linguistically and culturally proficient project to strengthen the civic participation of the immigrant community in the decision-making process.
Every 10 years, the boundaries for the council's legislative districts are redrawn after the census. As a result, in 2010, District 4 was redrawn to include Wheaton and its surrounding areas. To date, Wheaton and Glenman are the epicenter of the Latino community in Montgomery County, and both are within my district. As their representative, I have the responsibility to encourage and empower this segment of my constituents who have not traditionally been involved to play an active role in the decision-making process by enhancing their civic knowledge base and providing tools for participation. A key tenet of this initiative is empowerment. It helps individuals become agents of change, and in doing so, it promotes the collective well-being of our county.
At the beginning of 2012, the inaugural Latino Civic Leadership Conference was held at the Ana G. Mendez University Area Campus in Wheaton, where the Latino Civic Project was officially launched. Myra Cruz Solis was hired as the outreach coordinator for the Latino Civic Project by Councilmember Navarro to strategically carry out the mission and vision of this initiative. An important component of this project is a Spanish language curriculum that was designed and packaged into a series of workshops and is being taught by Myra to residents of all ages throughout different locations in the county, including elementary, middle and high schools, places of worship, apartment complexes, senior recreation centers, and nonprofit organizations. Its success has marked the lives of hundreds of residents. In 2019, Myra's position was expanded to engage communities in areas outside of District 4, such as Montgomery Village, Germantown, Gaithersburg, and the greater Silver Spring area.
Me ha ayudado bastante como madre de familia, cómo sobreguiar a mis hijos, cómo educarlos. He aprendido bastante derechos que no sabía sobre el condado donde vivimos, como latinos, como hispanos. Entonces he aprendido mucho.
Esas clases me ayudaron muchísimo para mejorar mi autoestima, para poder ayudar a otras mamás, para ayudarlas a que ellas también comprendan de que hay muchas oportunidades para nosotras las mujeres latinas, y me impactó tanto de que sé que voy a ayudar a otras personas para que ellas puedan sentirse cada día mejor, y también para ayudar a mi familia, para ayudar a otras familias, para mis hijos, para todos.
The overall objective of this curriculum is to build the civic knowledge base in order to encourage active community participation in the legislative, budgetary, and other decision-making processes. Among the different topics that are explored during these workshops are learning about the different branches of government, county services and resources, the county's budget process, and how to sign up to testify, as well as other areas based on the group's interests. New community leaders have emerged from this initiative, including parents who now play a more active role in their children's education. Griselda Ventura is one of them.
For me, has been a great experience. First of all, I have been a better person. We have learned a lot. We have been practicing how to speak in public, how to learn to find the resources that the county is offering, how to talk to our kids, how to go to school. It has been great.
Of great priority has been engaging grandparents or older adults. Culturally, in the Latino community, they are central and valued members of the family unit and their neighborhoods, so it was important to engage with them and leverage their connections with the community, and they have become active members throughout the years. It was due to their advocacy that the Holiday Park Senior Recreation Center got a brand new floor for one of their main rooms. They were also critical in advocating for expanded locations and hours of voting centers, as well as increased resources to improve the quality of life of older adults in the county.
Esta iniciativa ha sido bien favorable para nosotros porque hemos aprendido a hacer peticiones para nuestro bien, pues, del centro, y que nos han favorecido bastante. Y también en cuanto a las votaciones que se extendieron para que hubiera más tiempo para las votaciones. Y además han dado también mucho dinero para los adultos mayores que han pedido también su colaboración. O sea, hemos aprendido a pedir allí con este proyecto.
But this is not all. The Latino Civic Project has also led to many structural changes at the county government level, which Councilmember Navarro has championed alongside LCP participants. Among these accomplishments are making simultaneous interpretation and closed captioning subtitles available during public hearings for residents whose first language is not English.
Being able to testify in Spanish has given us a great opportunity. It has opened doors to us. Right now we have the new library, the community center. We also got to choose the design of the fire department, and we also have a community park, and also we have funds for childcare providers. So it has given us many opportunities, and I am proud of my community that went out there and testified. And the good thing it was that they could say it in Spanish, so that was really great.
Funding a community outreach position and the hiring of bilingual public information officers for the Latino and Asian communities at the County Council, launching In Tune with the County Council, a weekly bilingual radio program, and strengthening and building capacity in the Council's communication office, which is able to disseminate information in English, Spanish, French, and Amharic. The way in which the county engages with its residents continues to evolve, and it was precisely during the pandemic that, at the request of Councilmember Navarro with the support of her colleagues, Montgomery County created its own WhatsApp account for Spanish-speaking constituents, thus adding another tool in the toolbox to close gaps in communication between the government and its residents. In addition, a multicultural and multilingual translation pilot program was also established to report on COVID-19 and other resources, which was later officially established as a permanent part of the Office of Community Partnerships during the adoption of the fiscal year 2022 budget.
The expansion of these services has allowed the county to serve a greater number of residents. This has been crucial during the COVID-19 pandemic and the way we serve our immigrant community. It is our priority that all of our residents have access to the county's resources.
To date, hundreds of participants remain committed to this initiative, and its multiplier effect has led to the active participation of the Latino community in all forms of civic life.
It is my hope that our future leaders will take this project to all corners of our county. We need to ensure the equitable access to information and participation by all communities, so they can inform and affect the decisions of their representatives. A racial equity and social justice law that I was proud to champion requires that we make decisions through an equity and inclusion lens. And this can only be achieved with the full participation of everyone in our county. I would be remiss if I didn't thank those who have played a role, big and small, in bringing this project to life, including my council colleagues, the various county agencies, Montgomery County Public Schools, nonprofit organizations, places of worship, etc. Special thanks to the staff that made my vision a reality: Maria Cruz Solis, Berta Cersosimo, Carmen Hernandez, and Lillian Mass. And finally, I'd like to thank the project's participants themselves, who have become civic ambassadors and continue to empower and inspire others to lead. Gracias. Wow, that was extraordinary. It was an amazing travel through time. And when I first saw the draft of this video, I was tired. I was like, wow, we have been really busy, people, and it's just so gratifying to see it all. I will only, say that I do have to recognize publicly again Maria Cruz Solis, because when I decided to launch Centro Familia back in the day, she was one of the participants that I immediately identified as a natural born leader. And I hired her to launch the Latino Family Child Care Association, Leonas. And I literally just said, go make it happen. And she did, which is why when, this idea came to fruition, I was like, I think Maria Cruz Solis can make this happen. And then she found this extraordinary partner in Carmen Hernandez as well. And the two of them have been a real force, but it really it's been a collective work. So I think a round of applause for Maria Cruz Solis and Carmen Hernandez is in order. And of course, Berta, who is just a jack of all trades and is amazing. I want to now just turn it over to two of the participants, and then we will see whether council members have any reflections. And I know that time is running a little bit short, but of course, something like this, we needed to take a little bit of time to pause and to reflect and to celebrate, because especially with the latest census results, it is so important that we work on structural changes that lead to the capacity of all of our members in our community to be active participants. So I thought this would be a really fitting moment for everyone. So I want to first turn it over to Antonio Hernandez Cardoso, who is an amazing leader in his own right in the scientific community, but somehow he finds time to give back and has always been there from the very beginning to support this project, as well as to support the Latino Family Child Care Association that is so vibrant. So first I would like to turn over to him, and then we also will hear from Griselda Ventura, who is one of the participants. And I obviously wish we had time to hear from everyone. But just know from my heart that all of you are extraordinary leaders. So I know that when I leave the council, everything will be in good hands. Antonio Hernandez Cardoso.
Buenos días. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today on the framework of the celebration for the Hispanic Heritage Month. My name is Antonio Hernandez Cardoso, and I am glad to introduce my colleagues and friends Rosana Espinosa, Monica Braden, Angelica Zaragoza, Nuri Funes, and Rolando Lopez. We have been with the Latino Civic Project since its inception as Civic Ambassadors. This valuable initiative was created over nine years ago, as you have heard, after the first Latino conference in the county led by Councilmember Nancy Navarro. Since its creation, our mission has been to advocate for education, childcare, housing, economic development, among other critical topics. Based on our experiences, in recent years, the focus has been on civic education and the empowerment of the Latino community to be able to speak up and advocate by themselves. In fact, the Latino Civic Project has reached hundreds of families, allowing them to effectively participate in the communities of the children's schools and the neighborhoods in order to improve their lives and to cover their urgent and basic needs. We feel very proud and honored to be the first ones, and still nowadays we continue supporting and participating in this important project. Again, we thank Council Member Navarro and the other council members for supporting this project. There is still too much work to do, and we aim to continue growing and providing tools to the Latino community to find and train leaders that will help continue building a better and more culturally rich county. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Antonio. Y ahora, Griselda Ventura. Griselda, creo que tienes que abrir tu micrófono. ¿Puedes? Uh-oh, there she is. Ahí estamos.
Good morning. Can you hear me now? Hello? Yes. Okay.
Sí, te oímos.
Okay. Thank you very much for today's recognition and for highlighting the work of the Latino Civic Project. My name is Griselda Ventura, as you know. First, I would like to thank Council Member Navarro for her visionary and persistent leadership on behalf of all county residents. A special thanks to Mayra Cruz, Carmen Hernandez, and Berta Cersosimo, Linkages to Learning, and the rest of the council and the council's communication office for facilitating this learning space. I want to amplify that we truly are civic ambassadors, as Council Member Navarro mentioned, since we are collectively uplifting and multiplying the voices of many in our community. Doing so means that we have to learn about civic engagement in this county and in this country. Government structures are really complex and have many layers. Many of us started the civic education journeys at a very basic level, which is why the civic lessons are so important. For Latino and other communities of colors, the civic process is even more complex due to language barriers, as you can hear, governmental cultures difference, and the fact of that most of the time we have been left out of this process. For all these reasons, the Latino Civic Project has been excellent, great, and the latest census data confirms why. Latinos are the largest community of colors in the county, making up to 20.5% of the total population. There was a 31.4% increase in the Latino population between 2010 and 2020. This is the largest increase from any other racial ethnic group. The state of Maryland ranked 4th in the nation with the highest diversity index, which makes Maryland the most diverse state or territory on the East Coast, even more so than DC. This all means that all community must be able to be allowed to advocate for ourselves and have ability to shape public policy. In closing, being part of this initiative has been fulfilling, empowering, and personally a life-changing experience. Thank you so much, Council Member Navarro and the entire council for making this possible. Have a great day. Gracias.
Gracias, Griselda. Gracias, Antonio. Thank you so much to the two of you. And Griselda, your accent is beautiful. Even council members have accent, and we own it, and we are proud of it. You did amazing. So now I turn it over to you, Councilmember Hucker, to see if any of my colleagues have any remarks, and so we can close the celebration. Before we do close it, I just very quickly, en español, quiero darle las gracias a todos ustedes, los embajadores cívicos, por esta extraordinaria aventura que comenzó hace muchos años, casi 10 años y pico, con el liderazgo de María Cruz Solís, Carmen Hernández, Antonio Hernández, Angélica, Mónica Brade, Nuri, todos los que están aquí presentes, Berta, todo. Esto ha sido una fiesta impresionante de gente latina que está diciendo que estamos presentes, que estamos cansados de que siempre se nos hable de las cosas, de los retos, de los problemas, etcétera. Nosotros estamos aquí para contribuir. Y este es un ejemplo colectivo de lo que podemos hacer juntos cuando nos empoderamos y cuando decimos de que sí, que estamos aquí para construir un mejor futuro. Y lo han hecho, ustedes lo han hecho y lo tienen que seguir haciendo, multiplicando todo este proyecto a través del condado. Así que de mi corazón, muchas gracias. Esto fue un sueño que ustedes lo hicieron realidad y de verdad de que estoy muy orgullosa de nuestra comunidad y celebrando este mes de la herencia hispana. El año que viene, si Dios quiere, bailamos salsa otra vez en el Consejo. Muchas gracias. Turn it over to you, Council President Hooker.
That was terrific. Thank you so much to all of you. Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to join colleagues and just so honored to be part of this and to be able to join and celebrate not only Hispanic Heritage Month, but this incredible organization that started in District 4 has become a countywide effort. And if you look at our vaccine numbers, the fact that Latino residents now are more vaccinated than white residents in Montgomery County, projects like this, efforts like this, engagement and empowerment of communities in Montgomery County, it doesn't just change lives, it saves lives. And it has throughout this pandemic. And this effort that we learned today and are talking about now, really reflects that and has really driven the county council, county government to ensure that we were getting into communities, talking to people in their terms, on their turf, and having the type of culturally proficient and competent outreach that we need to be the type of government that is of and for the people that we serve. And so I am just so honored to do that. And without a doubt, the Hispanic heritage that we're celebrating, this is also about Councilmember Navarro's heritage and the inheritance you will leave the community and the county. And this project is just one of the many examples of the way that you've helped lift your district and your community and the entire county up and make sure that the benefits of that work will continue to blossom and grow for years and generations to come. And I am just so honored to be part of it. Many of us were in Wheaton this weekend, and I've got to say that that was also a celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month because we had arts and culture and music. We had community services in the new Marion Fryer Plaza. It was a testament to the type of public investments that have been made, to the outreach and the engagement of the community to make sure that it's a place that people want to be in, and people proved it because it was packed. And then to go over to the Wheaton Regional Park for the 8th Friendship Picnic and see another huge crowd, some of which were going from one to the other and some of which were separate, celebrating the strength of our community, the vibrancy of our community, the fact that you can see the world through Wheaton in so many different ways, through language, through culture, through music. And so thank you so much for everything that you have done, Councilmember Navarro, to everybody who has participated in this project, for everybody in our community who has stepped up in this pandemic, who has stepped up to hear the challenge and the clarion call of what Justice Brandeis called the most important political office there is, and that is of citizen and of civic engagement and of involvement in our community. So thank you so much, and really just honored and touched to be able to participate here today.
Thank you. Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Navarro, I really want to thank you for having the foresight to build an organization with your incredible team, first of all, that could reach throughout the county and help change the civic culture of our community. And to all of the community leaders who are here today, I'm reminded of how when Barack Obama ran for president, he'd been a state senator, a United States senator, a constitutional lawyer, a professor, but the part of his biography that was most appealing to people was that he had been a community organizer. And the work that you do every day to build those connections, to help everyone understand how to make a difference, how to fulfill their dreams for their family, for their neighborhood, for the community. There really is nothing more important. This is your county, and this is your government, and you will have that government accountable to you by participating. And there really is nothing more precious and important. And Councilmember Navarro, we must make sure that this work endures and grows. And as amazing as it is, I'm sure you will envision ways, and the community will envision ways to have it grow and evolve and blossom in ways that we don't know 10 years from now, as long as we're committed to it. And let's keep it going. Let's see it grow. Thank you very much. I'm really pleased to be with you here today to celebrate all that we are doing together on this important occasion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Jawando.
Thank you, and good to see everybody. Happy Hispanic Heritage Month. Councilman Navarro, thank you for your just commitment and just passion for this work. It's something that you and I share, trying to expand voice and lift up voice that exists, but doesn't always know how to navigate and to enter the kind of halls of power. And no one has done more in this county to date, in my view, to get a group of residents who are so vital to our community, our more than 200,000 Latino residents, engaged in their government. This was a beautiful tribute. I have been, one of the things I've loved most about our switch to Zoom, it's been a hard year, you mentioned that, is that we've been able to dramatically increase the amount of our residents who are engaging with us. And many of them have been Latino, but this has had a spreading effect on all immigrant populations in all communities in our county, our African immigrant community, our West Indian Caribbean community, our Asian community. And it really is because of your dedication and pushing for this issue. When I was laughing when I looked at the WhatsApp, I just remember how, you've almost become a broken record, but we needed you to be a broken record to get things done. And just such a gratifying thing to see how much progress we've made and how it's been institutionalized with all these great folks who are here today and within our county government, in our Office of PIO. And it's just a great, great legacy and something that we will continue to build on. And so to all the residents who have been touched by the thousands of residents, along with all of us, and Councilmember Alvarez, thank you for being such a big champion. It's an honor to serve with you, my friend. This is a great day and one of the greatest parts of Montgomery County. And I will continue to do my part to help continue the work and make sure that we continue to reach more and more residents, particularly in our Latino community. And as I mentioned, I think earlier this year, I had been a Montgomery College student taking Spanish. And so I will end with gracias por su dedicación a nuestra comunidad. And I know so hopefully you'll deal with my accent too, for those of us who are trying to communicate with all of our residents. But gracias and thank you, everybody. And for those who don't speak Spanish, I said thank you for your dedication to our community, I think. So thanks, everybody. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And thank you to Councilmember Navarro and to everyone who's here today. When you think about this meeting that we're now in, we're into it for 1 hour. And we've already talked about peace for the world and heritage that we're all proud of, and civic engagement, which we've all needed. This is the first hour of a meeting in a place called Montgomery County, Maryland. So, it is so very important that we work together and that you continue to help us and we continue to help each other to get to that place where we all need to be. This world is never going to be perfect, but if we don't do what we're doing today, then there's no way that this world will be perfect. So, it's already been mentioned about the friendship picnic that was in Wheaton one Sunday. I had the pleasure of being there, and part of what we all saw there, and I've mentioned a zillion times, and it's going to be a zillion and two because I said it was a zillion and one there, but that a community is a family, and we have to make certain that our family stays strong. That it's like any family, you don't always agree on every topic, but that doesn't mean that you don't straighten it out and that you don't come back together so that you can agree on all the other topics or most of them. So we need to continue to do that. And Councilmember Jawando is taking a course on Spanish. I am not, but I can tell you I do know the words, muchas gracias. So thank you so very, very much for everything you do for all of us each and every day. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Rice.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President, and Councilmember Navarro. Thank you so much. Nelson Mandela said education is the most powerful way to truly change the world. It is that weapon that we know means so much. And that's what you've undertaken with your Latino Civic project, with all of the things that you do. You're educating our community, who oftentimes is disconnected and marginalized, oftentimes because of language, and you've done everything you can to eliminate those barriers that stand in the way of a community being educated about their rights, about the offerings that our county has, about the opportunities that are there for them and for their children and their families. All of that is just so incredibly important. And so I have the pleasure of serving with you on the Education and Culture Committee. I know your passion. I know that it started well before you joined this council. And that's really what this is about. This is truly about making sure that everyone knows their place in this community, that they are welcome, that they have rights, that they should avail themselves of all the great opportunities that are here in this community. And we are all better for it. The more people who have the opportunities to really access all of the things that this county has to offer means that we are a better place for it. And so thank you for making the county a better place with your actions. Thank you to community members and all of the participants for making the community a better place because of your participation and your active involvement and enrollment in what the county has to offer. And so I'll close with this, since folks are flexing their Spanish today. Te agradecemos a tu pasión y trabajo. Muchas gracias. Tienes un buen día.
Thank you, Councilmember Glass.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, everybody, for being here and for your leadership, and especially Councilwoman Navarro for your incredible leadership and tenure here in Montgomery County. All of the things that you have done in all of the different capacities. The manifestational of all of that on this Zoom and that which is not on this Zoom is felt by all of us. And the first time I think I personally felt the power of this group and the power of this work was when we had the field visit for the Veers Mill Master Plan. And that evening, sitting in that room full of citizens who wanted to become engaged in this work. And they had come after school, after work, some of them after their second job. And that was powerful. One of the most powerful things I've experienced during this first term on the council. And I want to thank you, Councilmember Navarro, and all of everybody else who was here for helping make that happen. And similarly, just last night, I was in Quebec Terrace in Long Branch, speaking with mostly Latino residents in their own community, talking about public safety and sidewalks and buses. And so this work continues. and we will need to continue this legacy. Councilmember Navarro, as has been alluded to by you and others, I know that this is a relay race. And in some form or fashion, the baton is starting to be passed, as has been alluded to. I know Councilmember Albornoz is a partner in that relay race, as we all are, and as those who will be joining us in the ever expanded council and future generations. And some of you on this Zoom will be here as well. And so just thank you. The work continues, and gracias por todo. Thank you, President.
Thank you. Councilmember Navarro, any closing remarks?
The only closing remarks I will give is that as I start reflecting on my time on this council, I think that this is an example of patience and persistence, but also of love for community. Speaking about manifestations, the Wheaton Arts and Cultural Festival, for me, was a manifestation of a lot of this work. To see all members of the community coming together in that plaza was a vision. It was a vision that I know I had and fought very, very hard to make a reality with the support of you here, council members and many others, because it was important to create a physical space for this community, along with everyone, to come together and understand that there is a big bond between all of us, that there's a thread that connects us in this extraordinarily diverse county. So to see everyone so happy in this plaza for the first time, this was the biggest festival ever, was such an extraordinary, incredible, rewarding vision. And I hope that we continue to work on that because there are so many other areas of our county who still need that type of amenity, the kind of investment, et cetera, to lift up all of our members and be true to our goals of racial equity and social justice from a prosperity lens. So I thank you all, because even though we're celebrating today Hispanic Heritage Month and the Latino Civic Project, this is all connected. It is all connected, and it will all lead to a much stronger and a much better Montgomery County, state, and nation if we continue to do this kind of work from the ground up and empower our community members versus just simply giving them, little opportunities to participate. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. I look forward to this day every year and this celebration, but I especially enjoyed this tribute today and really am grateful for all your hard work, and it's so appropriate we're honoring this remarkable project. So thank you all for your dedication. Keep up the good work. We all need it more now than ever. Thank you so much for joining us. And have a great day. Thank you. Okay, colleagues, let me next recognize that last week we lost a very important member of the Montgomery County community. Patricia O'Neill was not only the longest serving member of the Board of Education, but she was a titan of the education system in our county. We all remember her dedication to her work and to our students. Pat was such a staunch believer that no matter how great our system is, we can always find ways to make it better for our children. We've lost, with her passing, an incredible repository of wisdom, but I know we're all heartened that over her 2 decades of service to our county schools, she leaves behind a legacy that will continue to help shape our school system for the better. All of us at the council continue to mourn her loss and send our condolences to her family, her loved ones, and our colleagues. So let's begin with a moment of silence. Thank you. Now we can move on to general business. Madam Clerk, could you please share the announcements, agenda changes, or petitions?
Good morning, Mr. President and council members. There are no agenda or calendar changes, and the council has not received any petitions today.
Thank you. Folks, the clerk has distributed the minutes to council members for the meetings of May 19th, 20th, 27th, June 15th, 17th, 22nd, 29th, July 13th, and the closed session minutes of April 13th. Are there any changes? Hearing no objection, the minutes are approved as submitted. Now we'll take up the interview for the county executive's appointee for Assistant Chief Administrative Officer, Earl Stoddard. We have been joined by the Chief Administrative Officer, Rich Madalino. We had to make time in today's agenda for this important update on the distribution of rent relief funds. So we've shortened the interview a little for the promotion of Earl to the position of ACAO, because Earl, we know we have worked with you for many years in your role as Director of the Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, and particularly closely over the last 2 years as you've helped to marshal the county government's response to the pandemic. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Madalino. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Council President Hucker, members of the council, Rich Madalino, Chief Administrative Officer. I just wanted to start, if I may, by also letting everyone know the county executive's sympathies to the O'Neill family for the passing of Pat. She was a great person. I've had the honor to work with her many years through my various roles, and it is a great loss to the community, and the county executive was proud to order the all flags across county buildings and our schools fly at half staff last week in honor of Mrs. O'Neill. And congratulations very much to Councilmember Navarro for the video and the tributes. The county executive has enjoyed working with you on all of these various initiatives and hopes to make continued progress to make sure these things do become part of the legacy of the county. Dr. Stoddard has been with the county for the last 7 years. 5 years as the Director of the Office of Emergency Management and Homeland Security. He has a PhD from the University of Pennsylvania, a Delaware native, a Flyers fan. We can't have everything in our appointees, but he has been an incredible contributor to the community over the last 5 years, and especially the last year and a half, where I think all of you have gained even a deeper appreciation for his contributions to the county. The county executive was thrilled when Dr. Stoddard was willing to take on this additional role. He has distinguished himself in building relationships across the county. He understands county government. As the director of OEMHS, he has worked with our public safety units. He is a former HHS employee and has deep knowledge about that department. So his portfolio of HHS and public safety is a natural fit. And I very much look forward to hearing Dr. Stoddard answer your questions to continue to impress, hopefully, the whole community and to earn your unanimous support. So thank you very much, Mr. Council President.
Thank you, Mr. Madalino. Not sure if that was strategic. He'll have to overcome your disclosure of his hockey loyalties. Dr. Stoddard, can you tell us about your background and your qualifications as they relate to your potential appointment?
Good morning, Council President, Council Vice President, and members of the Council. Appreciate very much you having me. I appreciate Mr. Madalino's introduction. I know you're all running behind. I do want to answer and make sure I give a complete answer, but I know I can be lengthy. I'm going to try to avoid that. So as he described, I hold a doctorate in cell and molecular biology from the University of Pennsylvania. I also have a master's in public health from Johns Hopkins. So obviously that gives me both a scientific and a public health background, which will largely support my efforts in supporting the Department of Health and Human Services and our initiatives in that arena. In addition, for the last 5 years, I've served as the Director of the Office of Emergency Management and Homeland Security for the county, which means I've been part of the public safety community, working closely with the Public Safety Committee of the County Council and all of our partners in public safety, police, fire, corrections, as well as our nonprofit partners in this arena as well. In addition to those experiences, as Mr. Madalino alluded to, I have a tremendous amount of experience in building relationships. And so I've served as the Region 5 Healthcare Coalition Vice Chair. I have been part of our local or county healthcare coalition, MOSEP. I have served as the inaugural chair for the last 7 years of our Maryland Emergency Response System, which is a bi-county relationship that we have with Prince George's County, police, fire, hospitals, public health as well. So I have a tremendous amount of experience in building relationships. I've been a member of the Homeland Security Executive Committee for the last 6 years, to work with our regional partners on Homeland Security issues, including many of the regional chief administrative officers, as well as other elected officials across the region in sort of making sure that the National Capital Region is the top of best practices for how we respond to Homeland Security related incidents. I've served as a disaster manager for a number of events that have impacted the county. As you know, Council President Hucker, the Arla Street incident was a tremendous impact in Montgomery County. Deeply involved in that, in the after action report that led to numerous changes that have been served, that have proved beneficial during COVID, like our community organizations active in disasters, and snowstorms, fires, several planned events, including 2 inaugurations and a papal visit. Was with the police department on January 6th, working closely with them as we had officers in harm's way in the district responding to the insurrection. And so obviously I've been a member of public safety. As Mr. Madaleno alluded to, I spent a 1.5 years as a manager, the public health preparedness and response administrator in HHS. And so I believe because of all these experiences, including the last 2 years with COVID, which I didn't even really get into because I think you all are familiar with that, partnerships and relationships allow me to be successful, I believe, in this new endeavor.
Thank you. If appointed, how would you position this role to work on racial equity and social justice issues?
Sure. So I appreciate the question. Very much. I'll start off with the public safety side. Obviously, with the work that we've done in reimagining public safety, both on the executive branch side as well as what the county council has done, there have been a number of new bills that have been passed by the county council. There's been the Police Accountability Act. There's been an audit report from the Reimagining Public Safety Committee. There's been an audit conducted by Effective Law Enforcement for All. And there has been the Police Advisory Commission has issued some findings, all of which have made recommendations about how we can improve police accountability, particularly as it relates to improving racial equity and social justice within law enforcement. And so obviously I will be co-chairing the Reimagining Public Safety Implementation Committee, which will help to coordinate all of those efforts, both with the police department, but also partners from intergovernmental relations, the county council, the office of the county attorney, and so on and so forth. And so, so obviously within the law enforcement space, I know that there are a number of tremendous community advocates in this arena. I plan to work very closely with them to ensure that their views are respected in the implementation of these changes. There are going to be a lot of changes. Some of them overlap and some of them need to be coordinated well, and I plan to make sure that we can do that. The one other thing within public safety I want to talk about is, and this is sort of an intersection with our new climate coordinator, is the work of climate adaptation, particularly for emergency management. I know that within the climate space, there are tremendous impacts that are felt disparately in our different racial and ethnic groups. I know that, for example, access to insurance it breaks along racial equity lines. And so as we think about the climate change that we're going to be facing, I know that emergency management is going to be focused on addressing climate adaptation and how we can ensure that our most vulnerable residents are not disproportionately impacted by climate change. And so I know that that will be an important part of my portfolio as well. Within HHS and Health and Human Services, obviously there are a tremendous number of areas. I think you all talked a lot about this morning with the Hispanic Heritage Month recognition and some of the work that was done during COVID. Obviously that work is absolutely critical to continue and expand to broaden our recognition and response to the fact that COVID has laid bare just the sheer health inequities that exist within our county, access to care that exists in our county. And so I plan to work very closely with our Department of Health and Human Services to further reduce those gaps. We've seen even differences in the way that the Latino Health Initiative has been able to respond and the African American Health Partnership. And I think learning from the best practices of what both were able to do to improve all of the other MHIPs is an important part of what I want to do. You all talked about the need for increased communication and outreach and a connection between those two things. I think that will be part of the strategy, particularly within Health and Human Services, to broaden access to care. And then obviously the hubs are going to be a critical way for us to deliver direct services in areas that have been disproportionately impacted by COVID, but also for which we know that there's disproportionate access to services already. And so I think that the hubs will be an important way that I can work to ensure racial equity. And the last thing I will talk about is access to food. One of the big successes, I think, of our COVID response was the establishment of our Food Security Task Force, which is a partnership between the county and its nonprofits to deliver food in a more coordinated fashion. I believe this work must continue. I believe it's important for us to establish food resiliency, and I do 100% believe that is a racial equity and access to services issue. And I look forward to working with you all to expand that out and build a legacy that addresses food insecurity long term.
Terrific, thank you. Are there any potential conflicts of interest of which we should be aware?
No, none that I'm aware of.
Great. Council Vice President Albornoz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I first had the opportunity to work directly with Dr. Stoddard on our 4:30 a.m. snow calls, which he helped facilitate on behalf of the county. And I can confirm he is just as calm, cool, and collected at 4:30 in the morning as he is at 4:30 in the afternoon. And I really commend the county executive and our chief administrative officer for this appointment. I can't think of a more qualified person right now to tackle a portfolio that includes a public health emergency and crisis, the implementation of the reimagining of our police department, and oh, by the way, climate change, than Dr. Stoddard. So he also has developed a tremendous reputation, not just building coalitions within the community, but also within county government, working with sister county agencies, troubleshooting, and has been extraordinarily responsive to all of us and continues to be throughout the pandemic. So thank you very much for your dedication and leadership, Dr. Stoddard. I just have one question. Obviously, it's not a one-size-fits-all in terms of the coordination with respective departments and agencies within the executive branch, and every issue is going to have its own complexity and multi-layers, and we all bring different relationships to this. But how do you envision communication moving forward with council and central staff? Should we work through you to get to department heads, or should we continue to establish relationship or continue to communicate directly with department heads? What do we envision in terms of the line of communication moving forward, acknowledging it's not a one-size-fits-all and different circumstances will require different responses?
Yeah, I don't want to serve as an impediment to the county council's important legislative oversight function. And so I want to make sure that you all have direct access to the department directors. I would just ask that, you know, as you're doing with Mr. Hartman, please do copy me on correspondence so that I'm just aware, so that if I ever receive a question on it, I think it can be helpful for me to understand. And to me, I think you all are an absolutely critical partner in implementing everything that we've talked about or will talk about in public safety and HHS. And so I plan to continue a close working relationship. You know, I talk very often with Ms. Michelson and members of your respective staffs, and you, the council members directly. I want to continue that. I aim to be responsive and trying to address questions, and so I do not want to serve as an impediment in any way. So please do continue the relationships that you all have developed with department directors in my sphere, but just include me in those communications so that I can be aware and can help be responsive as well.
And to be fair to you, Dr. Stoddard, I know you're continuing to establish connections in your old function as the Director of Emergency Management Services, which is such a critical position. I guess this question is for you, Mr. Madaleno. Dr. Stoddard's portfolio is already overflowing. What are the updates with regards to backfilling his position so that he can fully focus on this expansive portfolio that he has before him now?
Well, of course, he wanted to wait until the confirmation vote because we know that this is, teetering. So this was our, once we are moved past this point, we will talk to the county executive and to Dr. Stoddard and our public safety partners to figure out how we move forward with a recruitment effort to bring in a new OEMHS director. I think we have a few very strong internal candidates to review and to bring before the county executive.
Thank you. I'm just a big believer in continuity of service in government. We need it right now. So again, commend you for this appointment and look forward to continuing to work with you, Dr. Stoddard, and thank you for your dedication.
Thank you. Councilmember Raymer.
Just want to express my great enthusiasm for Dr. Stoddard's work and taking on this expanded role. You've been an MVP for us for many years, and we couldn't do what we're doing without you. So really couldn't be happier to support you. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I think that, as we continue to track our work and the results, especially during this pandemic, it is important to remember that we did rely very heavily on Dr. Gills as well as Dr. Stoddard. And I remember just taking a real quick peek at his resume at some point, I don't know why. And it was kind of like shocking because here we have Dr. Stoddard, who has the Master's of Public Health, concentration in infectious diseases. He has worked especially on emerging infectious diseases, virology. He has a Doctor of Philosophy in Cell and Molecular Biology, concentration in microbiology, virology, and parasitology, and a Bachelor's of Science in Biology, concentration in biotechnology. And so you bet I felt so excited that we had really an extraordinary A team, because his background was almost, it was kind of eerie how it was tailor-made for a situation such as this. And then you add an uncanny understanding of who we are in the county and an ability to capitalize and leverage all of that human capital in our communities. And it was just really extraordinary. And I want to say that because, I don't feel like we ever really talked so much about that. But this is, I think, one of the reasons why we had a really top-notch team helping all of us make sure that we made the appropriate decisions during this pandemic. So kudos to the county executive for this particular appointment, because it makes complete sense as we also now have to navigate, still trying to figure out where we're going, but navigate out of this pandemic and all of these other areas of concern, such as public safety, the climate crises, and so many others. Dr. Stoddard, just a very quick, question that I'm just very curious, because I've seen you already working on this, but can you tell me a little bit more about, how you will plan to continue to interface with the council, but also with the county's population that is so diverse, and then how will you help the administration capitalize on those organic responses that sometimes are just so critical. And I feel like during the pandemic, we took advantage of that. So for example, the Up County Hub, it was very organic, right? Grace River Oven and Black Rock and so many community members came together. Boom, this became like a template that really has now been extraordinary. So can you talk to me a little bit about just some of your thoughts in terms of where that we have additional potential to elevate some of these organic solutions that come out of the community, but do need support, do need our help, and do need us to validate in order for it to have the kind of impact that we have seen during this pandemic?
Sure. Thank you very much, Councilmember Navarro. There's a few things I want to say about this. So first off, I think one of the key things we have to understand is that the county council as well does not have a monopoly on good ideas. There are nonprofits and community groups that we know do tremendous work and can bring forward suggestions and models that frankly we need to embrace and build out. And so as an emergency manager, I often tell people that emergency management in Montgomery County is very small. It's approximately an 18-person contract and employee agency. And so whenever emergency management has to implement something, it's reliant on the workforce or willpower or stuff that other organizations bring, not just county agencies, but also nonprofits and others. And so I think my experience in terms of understanding that you have to work with people to meet goals and that you aren't going to be responsible for doing and controlling all of the resources, and you have to build coalitions towards that end and build will amongst all the partners to do something, not just, I cannot just direct an agency to go do something. I can't direct a nonprofit to go do something. It's all about coalition building, recognition of the fact that they have good ideas. And obviously responding to this pandemic is very different from other events, but there are a lot of similarities in the sense that your best laid plans when you start going into something get knocked, get battered pretty quickly, and you have to adapt and overcome as new challenges emerge or as things happen that you did not expect. That is true in the real world as well. And the way that we operate is often we have plans and procedures and things, with not even just in the emergency space, but in how we respond to the community generally. But we need to be able to recognize and adapt quickly when those strategies would be improved through an idea or collaboration that we see at the grassroots level. I mean, to me, one of the biggest things is always appreciating and staying close to the operators, whether that's a nonprofit, in public safety, et cetera. You sometimes when you work strictly in the higher levels of an organization or at a management level or at a higher level even within the county, you lose sight of this is the reality on the ground for the nonprofit, for the agency delivering the services. And so I think it's key that we have to keep looking back at how they're being effective on the ground. And we have tremendous nonprofits and other partners in this community and building models that they think will work, not just that from a strategic level we think can work. Hope that addresses your question.
It does. Thank you so much. And I look forward to supporting your appointment.
Thank you. Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks to colleagues. I will refrain from questions here. I think that all the questions that needed to be asked for whether or not you are ready to take on this massive portfolio you've been answering for the past 19 months and even before that, but certainly during this pandemic. I will echo Councilmember Navarro's comments about feeling reassured to have somebody in your background. I think sometimes they say it's better to be lucky than to be good. We were lucky that you were good and had the academic background to meet a moment that none of us could have ever expected. But it wasn't just the academic background. I think your ability to take the policy and meet the real life practicality and be able to build the coalitions and communicate with us, with the public, really has helped us navigate through this crisis. I really do personally feel like one of the bright spots of this really challenging time was being able to work together with you and to benefit from your expertise and your leadership. At dark moments, stars shine the brightest, and you really have emerged as a star in our county government. And I couldn't think of a more fitting person to take on this tremendous portfolio that is sprawling and is taking on some of the greatest crises that our country and our world are facing, and to turn them inward into our county to figure out how we can bring people together to address them and to actually solve the problems that we face. So I'm very excited about this appointment. I look forward to working together with you in this new role. I appreciate the fact that you are going to be able to take the tremendous background and skills that you have and have an even greater portfolio and a broader portfolio across county agencies. And we all, I know, feel confident and comfortable in your ability to rise to the occasion once again, as you have throughout this crisis and in every role that you've taken on behalf of county government. So look forward to proudly supporting your appointment.
Thank you. Councilmember Glass.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Dr. Stoddard, thank you for your continued service, and I appreciate the county executive for lifting you up and appointing you to this elevated position. And having worked with you, during this term, but more closely, especially during the last 18 months of this pandemic, we've all realized that county government has needed to be nimble if we're to meet the challenges that our residents needed, whether it was updating and modernizing our operations, things like, contracts and procurement, to rethinking open space, to figuring out how to get more tests and vaccines, right? And the advocacy that went into that. And so you have been an integral part of all of these conversations, trying to keep our residents healthy and safe. And so absolutely look forward to supporting you and working with you. But I just have one question, and it's on the same lines of what I was just sharing. I'm curious from your perspective over the last 18 months, but having been in government before that, what do you think we need to do? What have we learned over this time period and trying to keep our residents healthy and safe during a pandemic, during a time of emergency, that we should incorporate moving forward, hopefully when we reach this post-pandemic world, which I do hope is coming soon. But there are lessons learned that we should incorporate and build in to that post-pandemic world. So I'm curious your observations of what we can continue doing better.
I will try to keep this brief because I think we could probably talk for days on this issue. And just to give you a heads up, we are working on an after action report within the emergency management. We've conducted probably close to 100 hours of interviews at this point. We will be engaging with the county council to get your thoughts as well. But I mean, a few things that come off the top of my mind. I mentioned this in my opening, and certainly it was a theme in the Hispanic Heritage Month recognition, is the communications and outreach need to be, those two things need to be linked intrinsically. Number one, we did outreach and we did communications, but sometimes they were not linked synergistically to address particularly reaching the most vulnerable populations. And so I think that's got to be a legacy of our infrastructure. We talk about, one of the things that was laid bare during the pandemic is that we have some great programming as it relates to on the ground communications and outreach, but for example, during a pandemic, you can't necessarily always rely on the modalities that you've normally delivered messages through, whether it be the street outreach team, street outreach network, or social media or other things like that. We have to have a more diverse, broader set of communications and outreach strategies, particularly within the health and human services space. I think so that's a big takeaway for me. You talked about the procurement side. I think there are some efficiencies that Director Shetty is gaining, and he was tremendous, but I still think there's some arenas there where there is process during times of crisis where we've got to figure out how we balance the being good stewards of taxpayer funds and having good oversight with being expeditious in our implementation of programming. I think that's a constant that we need to learn. And the final thing I'll limit it to this final thing is, we still within government could do a better job of coordinating between agencies on issues where there is if it's a health specific event, health will play a huge leadership role, but at the same time, HHS needs to be further supported, and there needs to be a greater connection internal to government on how we provide resources to departments who are lead agencies and responding to whatever the crisis du jour. But how they play a leadership role, but they aren't necessarily going to be expected to do everything. And so I think some additional process in place to allow us to better support agencies. And this doesn't have to be a public health crisis necessarily. It could be the refugee challenges that we're facing or have faced in recent years. It could be on a public safety issue. I mean, there's a lot of places where we just need to be more nimble at moving things between agencies within county government. And that's something I hope to bring to this new role is a collaborative approach that aims to, have people not operate in silos as often as we can do on occasion.
Well, I appreciate you scratching the surface a little bit about the forthcoming report. And, you had me. You stated the correct response in your opening sentence in saying you had a lot of thoughts on it, right? And weren't even going to do it justice in this conversation. And that is fantastic because I think there's a lot of work that we need to do and that you are already identifying these things. Look forward to that conversation and look forward to continue working with you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I am going to be extremely brief. I thought I was going to be the briefest person to speak this morning, but then the Councilmember Reamer, I think, might win that. But Earl, I look forward to voting for you. I have to stay, and I've seen you. We saw you yesterday at Public Safety Committee. I'll see you tomorrow morning at Criminal Justice Coordinating Commission. I have seen you time and time again, many times during a week. And I have to sincerely say there has never been a time that I haven't felt very, very comforted to know that you were working on a situation that we're working on. And that is something and because you work on as has been noted time and time again, you work on the toughest situations in some cases that we possibly face. And so I sincerely appreciate everything you've done, everything you will be doing. And I have to say, beyond your education, your personality is absolutely perfect for this position. So thank you very much. I look forward to voting for you. I turn it back over to you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilmember Rice.
Dr. Stoddard, thank you so much for your continued partnership, for always being responsive, picking up the phone when we're calling at all hours of the evening, responding via text. It means a lot, and communication is key in being a CAO. So I know that you'll continue in that respect and look forward to working with you. Look forward to voting for you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilmember Jawanda.
Thank you, and I'll be brief as well. Dr. Stoddard, Earl, for really happy that you're moving into this position. I think it makes a lot of sense. It's good judgment on the folks who put you there. And I look forward to continue to working with you on all these really, really important issues. And congratulations on somehow losing the COVID-19 during COVID-19. So I saw you this weekend. I almost didn't recognize you. So looking forward to continue working with you, and really, really happy that you're going to be in this post. Thank you.
Thank you. Earl, you're doing a great job. So glad you're willing to fill this role, and look forward to voting for you as well. If there's no other comments, thank you so much for putting yourself forward. Thanks, Mr. Madaleno. This is terrific, and we'll see you all soon. All right, colleagues, now we can sit for District Council. First, we have a work session on the SRA 2002 subdivision ordinance revisions, clarifications, and corrections. This intends to make improvements to the subdivision regulations that were last updated in 2017. I'll call on Chair Reamer and Ms. Ndu.
Thank you, Council President. The Fed committee did this, so you don't have to. This is a very extensive but somewhat technical item here, and I would respectfully suggest that, if a council member has a question about it, we could go to that, but perhaps we could ask Ms. Nadeau to give us just a few highlights without walking through the entire SRA, because I don't think it's necessary. It's been publicly disclosed with a committee session. It's extensive. At the same time, it's relatively modest in its scope. So perhaps we'll ask council staff to just share some highlights, and then we can move on to the additional items.
Good morning, council members. I'm happy to do that. So the intent of this SRA is to make corrections and clarify some language from the 2017 version. There's a lot of minor changes, but as far as the major changes, I can just list them. So first, there's new provisions for flag lots and lots without frontage. There's a platting exemption for utility and communication structures. There's vacating approved subdivisions, new provisions. There's a new extension for reservation of land for public use. There's a change to the initiation date for the APF validity period. There's a limit on the total number of years for planning board extensions. There were revisions to the section on the subdivision of land within an approved cluster subdivision. There is a addition to the landscape and lighting plans, mostly that it's going to require places of worship and institutional uses to go through that process. The approval procedure for preliminary submissions was adjusted. There's some revisions to the administrative subdivision section. The Fed committee added an amendment about structures not crossing lot lines. And then there were also some minor formatting amendments that came out of the Fed committee work session. So that's the list of the major changes, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. So I pass it back to the council president. Council members have questions.
I don't see any questions yet. So with that, the Fed committee recommends approval with amendments. I'm sorry. No, we're just doing a work session. Okay. Sorry. Anything else on this topic? Terrific. Okay, thank you. We can now move on to the work session and action on zoning text amendment 2102, independent living facility for seniors or persons with disability, residential zone standards. Chair Reamer.
Thank you. All right. Appreciation to council members Friedson and Katz for working together to bring this to us. This simply it changes the building types that can be used for independent living facilities to allow smaller buildings, townhomes, duplexes, detached houses to also be used for those kinds of supportive services. As our population is aging and we have a serious housing crunch in the county, it certainly is wise for us to be as flexible as possible in what kind of building structures can be used for supportive seniors services. So a good ZTA that we adopted or recommended from the committee, and perhaps the co-lead sponsors may wish to add some comments. Thank you.
Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you so much. Just first wanted to thank the committee and Committee Chair Reamer, and also thank Councilmember Katz for joining together with this, as well as Ms. Nadeau for her help and work on this. I think the chair said it well, but the ZTA will allow more diverse housing options and less intensive building types such as townhomes and others. It really reflects the way that the broader housing market is changing and allows for senior housing, senior specific housing, to be able to reflect that as well. I want to thank Council President Hucker, Council Members Navarro and Reamer for being co-sponsors as well. I just wanted to note that this effort, as Council members will note, mirrors the ZTA 2008, which we passed recently, which allowed for more diverse housing types for residential care facilities. So this is for independent living facilities. That was for residential care facilities, but it really is in the spirit of the same efforts to reflect market demand for a more campus-like style of facility, and to just ensure that our zoning code stays current and reflects the needs of our population increasingly, which not only do we need more housing, we need more types of housing for more people. We have an aging community, and we need to make sure that we can allow more and more of our residents to age not only in place in their homes that they're currently in, but age in our community. If their needs change, the facilities that they require change, providing opportunities for them to move close by, but to stay near friends and family, to maintain quality of life, to continue giving back to our community is increasingly important. So with that, I'll turn back to you to turn to Councilmember Katz, but just wanted to thank everybody for your efforts and support.
Thank you. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I too just want to simply thank the committee and Councilmember Friedson and all involved. This, we need to remember that as much as our community grows, we need to make certain that our zoning stays up to date with it. And this is exactly what this zoning text amendment does. It allows, as Councilmember Friedson has said, it allows for people to have the better life while they're here in Montgomery County. And that's what it takes. And that's why this is an important step. And I'm more than happy to make a motion if you would like one, please.
And Council Vice President Albornoz.
I just wanted to thank you both for leading this effort. This is critically important. Councilmember Friedson said it very well, as well as Councilmember Katz, that the concept of living in community and being able to provide a support structure doesn't just increase quality of life, it contributes to better public health. And so this is a really important step forward and keeps with the trends that we're seeing. And I'm particularly grateful of the mention for a community for people with disabilities, who we need to continue to highlight and have been disproportionately impacted over this last year and a half in so many different ways. We're going to have to keep pace with ensuring that there's staffing available within these beautiful facilities, which is another conversation. But this is an important step forward, and I thank you both for your leadership on it. I look forward to voting for it.
Great. It is definitely an important step forward. Thank you all, everybody involved. The Fed committee recommends approval with amendments this time. So, Madam Clerk, if there are no other comments, could you please call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Glass?
Yes.
Mr. Glass votes yes. Mr. Jawando?
Yes.
Mr. Jawando votes yes. Mr. Reamer?
Yes.
Mr. Reamer votes yes. Ms. Navarro?
Yes.
Ms. Navarro votes yes. Mr. Rice?
Yes.
Mr. Rice votes yes. Mr. Friedson?
Yes.
Mr. Friedson votes yes. Mr. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Katz votes yes. Mr. Albornoz?
Yes.
Mr. Albornoz votes yes. And Mr. Hucker?
Yes.
Mr. Hucker votes yes.
All right. ZTA 2102 passes. Well done. Next is a work session and action on zoning text amendment 2103, charitable philanthropic institutions, kitchens. Action is scheduled for 9/28/21. I don't know about that. Chair Reamer.
Thank you, Councilmember Friedson. Took the time to prepare this. This is a kind of a follow-on or an evolution of something that the council sought to allow a number of years ago, which is to help small nonprofits that are providing often specialized services for people who need food and health support. And there is a terrific organization that has been providing this work for a number of years. And sorry, I'm looking through the ZTA for the reference to it. Thank you very much. And I'll turn it over to Councilmember Friedson to talk about the important work that, well, this is applying in general throughout the county. We know of this great organization, Cor Holim, that is providing this food support, and we hope that it's something that others will do as well.
Thank you very much for that. Bikur Holim means caring for the sick in Hebrew, and that's what the organization does. This ZTA, which I am extremely proud, has the support and co-sponsorship of the entire county council, which I think sends a very strong message of the type of community we are, that we strive to be, and the type of partnerships that we have continued to embark on with our local nonprofit partners to provide support for vulnerable members of our community, and also to ensure that there is culturally appropriate food and resources for our community. This really builds on so much of the work that has been done by this county council, by county government, by our partner agencies. This was requested by Bikur Holim along with the Jewish Community Relations Council to expand the facility that they have to be able to have a commercial grade kitchen to allow for food to be prepared on the premises and distributed off premises, which they won't charge for, but will provide kosher meals. We've talked about before, when you are sick and in the hospital, the prepared kosher meals that have been offered oftentimes are not healthy, and they do not meet the doctor's requirements in terms of sodium and others, because they are prepared foods. And so this will allow for fresh food that is healthy, that meets the health needs of the community, but also does so in a culturally appropriate way for both patients and caregivers. I particularly want to thank Councilmember Navarro, who led the effort originally on this ZTA, on the first one, to allow for this facility, which does tremendous work in my district, in our community, and this is building upon that important work to really take this organization to the next level and the next step. I want to thank the entire council for its work, not just supporting this organization, but really, I think, being a model in the region and the country for the way that local governments can partner with local service providers in order to protect the most vulnerable in our community.
Terrific. Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Councilmember Friedson, for introducing this CTA. I think this is an example of how, we work so closely with our community. We were just, talking about this issue of making sure that we are constantly responding to those needs that emerge. And in 2015, when, I was approached and I heard about the importance of being able to have a place that was close, for example, to NIH if people were seeking any kind of treatment, but a place that, residents or families, et cetera, who were coming here, who have to support their loved one, really appropriate services, care, support. It just made so much sense. And so in 2015, we did pass a ZTA, and it was, really great to work with Bigger Colleen to make sure that this could become a reality. But no doubt that now we see the importance of us, enhancing this with a kitchen and with the ability to prepare the food. And so, for me, it was a no-brainer. I think it just really enhances what we have started, and hopefully can serve as a model for many other areas of the county and many other communities for us to be able to respond appropriately and provide support at a time when folks need it most. So again, I thank you for introducing this, and I was very proud to be a co-sponsor this time around.
Terrific, thanks. So the Fed Committee recommends ZTA 2103 with amendments. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Glass?
Yes.
Mr. Glass votes yes. Mr. Duando?
Yes.
Mr. Duando votes yes. Mr. Reamer?
Yes.
Mr. Reamer votes yes. Ms. Navarro?
Yes.
Ms. Navarro votes yes. Mr. Rice?
Yes.
Mr. Rice votes yes. Mr. Friedson?
Yes.
Mr. Friedson votes yes. Mr. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Katz votes yes. Mr. Albornoz?
Yes.
Mr. Albornoz votes yes. And Mr. Hucker?
Yes.
Mr. Hucker votes yes.
ZTA 2103 passes as well. Terrific. Thanks, everybody. We're catching up a little bit. Next is a work session on the 10-year solid waste plan update. On March 22nd and on July 9th, the T&E committee took up the 10-year solid waste plan. I'll remind everybody that state law requires every county to adopt and submit to the Maryland Department of Environment a 10-year plan dealing with solid waste disposal systems and solid waste acceptance facilities and the systematic collection and disposal of solid waste. The plan is supposed to be renewed and passed every 3 years. The current plan was adopted in March 2015, so we're behind. The T&E committee heard from stakeholders and held robust discussions on how we can align our 10-year plan with our climate goals and efforts. The committee recommends approval with amendments. Let me turn it over to Mr. Levchenko to go over the packet.
Thank you, President Hucker. And I did want to mention the delay in the plan is a reasonable delay in this case, because we did have a couple of other planning efforts going on that we wanted to incorporate into this,
right,
including the food waste diversion and recycling strategic plan, you may recall, that was advanced by the council, and we wanted to make sure that was incorporated into this plan. And then also we had an Aiming for Zero Waste task force effort, and much of their work is very much put a footprint on this plan. So once again, those were very valuable efforts that made this plan better. And on top of that, of course, we had the pandemic last year. So those are three very good reasons why the plan is 5 years old, or the current plan is 5 years old and not 3 years old. I just wanted to mention that because it was not a administrative problem. It was something that was intended, that we wait for some of these actions to take place. With that in mind, Council President Hucker mentioned or alluded to the fact that this is a pretty big plan with a lot of broad policies in it. And there's a substantial amount of information in this 200 plus page plan. The committee focused on the priorities going forward, the plan of action, if you will, in Chapter 5 of the plan. A lot of the chapters are background information that the state requires and updates to that information. So a lot of that is just very important, but not critical for the council to focus on. Staff reviewed it to make sure that it was consistent with what we believe the state needed and consistent with our current priorities, and did not find anything other than some errata and updates that are needed there given the age of the plan. So there are some elements that will be updated, but no substantive issues that need further review by the council. The other thing I did want to note is that pursuant to Senate Bill 370, it's noted on page 2 of the memo, recycling for office buildings, which was signed into law at the state in May 2019, that plan is incorporated into this 10-year plan as required. It's as an appendix to the plan. So that's something else that's new in this plan. Once again, did not require substantive review by the council at this point. In terms of the committee review, there were 2 meetings with the committee. The first was essentially before the budget in March, and then after budget in July, we had a follow-up meeting. The first meeting included a briefing by DEP staff of the executive's recommended plan update, and that the slides from that briefing are included or attached to the packet or the council staff report for today. And if necessary, we can refer to that if we need to get into some further detail. I did want to note that we do have DEP folks here today to answer questions as well. We have the DEP Director, Adam Ortiz, DEP Deputy Director, Patty Bubar. We have the Recycling and Resource Management Chief, Willie Wayner, and we also have Rich Harris from OMB here to answer questions as well. As I mentioned earlier, the Aiming for Zero Waste effort was had a significant impact on this plan. And a lot of the discussion in March talked about some of the new elements in the plan, many of which were first identified by the Aiming for Zero Waste Task Force. These included a number of initiatives, some of which are now moving forward, such as the upgrade of the material recovery facility. That was a subject of an amendment this past spring that the council approved that will both upgrade the facility on site, but also increase the throughput of the facility. Which is a critical component of our system. And that was a very high priority of the Aiming for Zero Waste Task Force. And the solid waste plan obviously notes this, the need for that. We've updated the plan for final action by the council, which notes the fact that it's now moved a little further along in the process. It's now an approved project. A number of other initiatives that were of interest to the Zero Waste Task Force included continued expansion of commercial and residential food waste composting and diversion. So a lot of the plan talks about some next steps there, including expansion of the current commercial effort, as well as a food waste residential pilot that DEP can speak to if the council members are interested. That's looking to move forward this fiscal year. Also, there's work ongoing to develop a pay-as-you-throw pilot. That's also something that was of interest to the Aiming for Zero Waste Task Force, and it's noted in the plan, of course, as well. As well as a couple of other issues, such as the need for some update at the transfer station itself. The material recovery facility is adjacent to the main transfer station site, but the transfer station itself also has some capacity issues. And also looking to perhaps expand the scope of the facility to more of an eco park. That's something that was also discussed in detail by the task force and something that's noted in the 10-year plan as an item to be further studied. And then, of course, we have a couple of very big issues that were identified in the plan. And they're the ones that are really subject to much of the committee discussion at the July meeting. And these included the issue of potential expansion of Subdistrict A or into Subdistrict B. If you recall, in Subdistrict A, mostly the lower part of the county contracts with haulers to provide trash collection services to single-family homes and residences of fewer than 7 units. And with some exceptions for municipalities and so forth. In Subdistrict B, the waste collection services are the responsibility of the property owner, either directly or through an HOA or some other organization. So the county does not have the level of control in Subdistrict B with waste collection that it does in Subdistrict A. And the reason that's important is because some of the initiatives that are being looked at could potentially be more efficient or easier to implement under a Subdistrict A model versus a Subdistrict B model. This topic was the subject of a Office of Legislative Oversight report, 2019-17, and there's a link in the packet on page 3 of the memorandum that looked at a number of solid waste issues, including this Subdistrict A and Subdistrict B issue. And the report was released back in 2019, but for a variety of reasons, including the pandemic, this specific issue has not been taken up by the committee at this point. And there's still a lot of review and discussion that needs to happen with regard to the issue of Subdistrict A and Subdistrict B. So what staff had recommended and the committee was comfortable with was some modification to the text in the plan, noting that the council is considering this issue, not that there's a recommendation to move forward in one direction or the other. So just to allow that further study to take place. So that was really the first of two major issues, and I'll stop here to see if there's any questions from staff, from council members, or if DEP would like to weigh in.
Well, I'll just be brief. First, Mr. President, I want to express my gratitude to Mr. Levchenko, who's been super engaged, super diligent, super thoughtful in working with the department and keeping the interests of the county's waste and recycling infrastructure front and center. There's a lot in the report, a lot of details, a lot of big stuff. Montgomery County is blessed and privileged to have a comprehensive infrastructure that the county owns. It's publicly owned. That's pretty rare, and it's, you know, like anything, you know, it needs maintenance and upgrading and updating. So in short, I think the report is super comprehensive. It takes into account the infrastructure and what's needed to modernize and optimize the infrastructure. It takes into consideration programming. How do our operations best serve the environment and the public and increase diversion on our journey towards zero waste, and to have great policy. Great laws are important. Montgomery County must remain a leader to show other jurisdictions what needs to be done just to manage this overwhelming amount of consumer disposables. So I could go on for days, like all of you. Many of us have been in conversation about that. Some of you have come out to our facilities. So I also appreciate the questions and engagement of the council members, but I'll also stop here if there are any questions that myself or my teammates can answer.
Great. Okay. First is Council Vice President Albornoz.
Thank you, Mr. Levchenko. I admit I did not read all 200 pages of the report, but was able to read the summary. And thank you, Director Ortiz, for the meeting you and I had recently, answering some of my questions regarding the report generally, which is incredibly comprehensive and I think overall a very strong plan. I did want to highlight a couple of things, both one of a concern and the other an opportunity. The concern is that I think the Environmental Integrity Project recently released a report that the state of Maryland's the landfills within municipalities actually exert 4 times the level of CO2 emissions than were originally thought. And this is consistent with what we're seeing nationally and globally as well. We always knew landfills were dangerous for our environment, oftentimes placed adjacent to communities of color. So there's a racial equity component. But as we look for solutions moving forward, could you describe for me, from your all's assessment, landfills in general? Obviously, it's choosing the least worst option when disposing of waste, and obviously we have to enact all the policies that we can to minimize it, but there will always be some, unfortunately. Could you describe a little bit your reflections on that report and some of what you're hearing within the industry regarding landfills generally?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Councilman. And I'm intimately familiar with landfills. Never thought I would say that in my career, having overseen one of the biggest ones in the region in my last job. The science is changing fast in what's known in the industry. Basically, there's sort of two failures in how methane, in particular, had been counted. Methane, depending on your yardstick, can be 20 to 60 times more potent than carbon as a greenhouse gas. So the first thing, which received a lot of attention probably 6 or 8 months ago, was that MDE's math was wrong. Just their model for calculating fugitive emissions was wrong. And then there's another series of studies that utilize new technology involving airplane flyover studies. So the ability, this is a big investment by the federal government to be able to track greenhouse gases and climate change. So there's much more sophisticated equipment that involves planes flying over landfills. That may seem like common sense, but historically the way that methane had been monitored was at the ground level. And this is what we did in Prince George's County. We hire a consultant to come and walk around with a monitor like a Geiger counter. But what's being found is that when you go up higher, you're able to measure a plume of methane, and that there could be dozens or perhaps hundreds of leakage points in the landfill. So there's studies of Maryland and regional landfills, and there's studies in California. All of them are public, and they're showing that emissions just from that are about twice as much. So we're trying, Mr. Alvarno, so we're trying to digest all that. The county executive has asked us to take a look at that and the environmental impacts and try to compare them to the externalities from the incinerator. So I hope that was concise. Hope that wasn't too geeky for you.
And actually, Councilmember Alvarez, you sort of stole my thunder there. My next point of or next element in my staff report is to talk about the resource recovery facility and landfilling issues and how those came over in the plan and the executive's position there. And I'd like to go through that first before we have further discussion, just so that everyone has some background and where things stand and what the committee recommendation was. And I think we can continue this discussion today, and then like you'll see, it'll have to continue. But I did want to note that in the staff report, I do provide some background on that. And the going back to the Aiming for Zero Waste planning process, during that process, the county executive expressed an interest in closing the resource recovery facility. So that was very much on the group's mind when it was reviewing a lot of these solid waste issues. And the consultant that was assisting that process did look at the potential closure and comparison, and some comparisons between that and some landfilling options, both out of county landfill and also potential use of the county's reserve site 2, as a potential landfill. So they did identify there's some information that I put in the council staff report related to that consultant work. So that's sort of the first piece. Then we had, of course, this plan came over, and in it, the executive or the text of the plan noted that there was going to be this consideration that Mr. Ortiz mentioned of looking at alternatives to the continued use of the resource recovery facility. So that's noted in the plan. And we are at a crossroads, if you will. We have an aging resource recovery facility that, if it's to continue to be used long-term, will need significant investments over time, versus alternatives, which would be presumably some form of landfilling at this point, whether out of county or site 2 or some combination. So what we don't have, though, is a lot of analysis of those options side by side with the kind of information the council would need to make a decision and decide, okay, we're going to amend the 10-year plan to pursue this option. We're just not there yet. And the language that I've noted that I've suggested adding in the plan, and that the committee supported, was to make clear the work that needs to happen to put the council in a position to make this, to be ready to make an amendment to the 10-year plan to say what we're going to be doing for the next 20 to 30 years. So that's the language that I've noted on pages 5 and 6 of the memo. Some of it was already in there, but I added some clarifying language, including that this is the kind of topic that does need to take the form of an amendment to the 10-year plan. This is not something that staff feels the executive could unilaterally decide. It's a major component of the county's solid waste management process and has effects throughout its efforts and its facilities. So that was number one. Then, subsequent to the release of the plan, the executive and the council did receive a report, a beyond incineration report, from what's called Zero Waste Montgomery County, which was a group underwritten by the Sugarloaf Citizens Association. And they provided an analysis of the pros and cons of incineration versus landfilling, and provided a lot of information that DEP is still absorbing and working on, and that can inform their work going forward. But once again, we're not in a position as the council to make a decision now about what we want to do for the next 20 or 30 years. We still need that analysis to play out. We have the benefit of the Aiming for Zero Waste work. We have now the benefit of this report that was done by an outside group, but we really need to have DEP go through this and look at continued use of the resource recovery facility and or landfilling options, both out of county and perhaps our Site 2 option. Those are all options that are on the table and need to be looked at. And so that key issue, along with Subdistrict B, which I mentioned earlier, we're just not ready to sort of come down on where that is right now. And we need to have, the council needs to be in a position to do that in the coming months. And the language that the committee is recommending in this plan, I think, would get us there. So that's just as background before we get into any further questions and comments about that particular issue. I thought that might be useful for folks as background.
Right. And Keith, and just to add to your initial frame of this, it's not just the bad choice of incinerator versus landfills in and out of the county. There's a lot more to be done on improving our recycling program, on composting, which we're finally moving forward on.
Absolutely.
And I think we're really weak on, and the DEP really needs to do a lot of work on source reduction, which is a big nut to crack. But it's, given the choices, that's not a part that we need to leave out. Councilmember Friedson.
Sorry, Mr. President.
I'm sorry, Council Vice President. We're coming back to you.
No, it's okay. I appreciated Mr. Levchenko's framing of the context because that was super important. And I have a lot of faith in Director Ortiz and his staff to independently analyze all of the myriad of factors that are going to go into these very difficult decisions, which obviously don't have easy solutions, including cost, including the ongoing impact of landfills, including taking care of the opportunities that are out there, which I'll get to in a minute, but also just the practical reality of what's in front of us. So, and I look forward to this process. This is an issue I'm particularly interested in, and so I will be engaging a little bit more in it. On the opportunity, and both Mr. President and Mr. Chairman, the composting, I think, presents tremendous opportunities. I was given a very impressive presentation, as I believe most of my colleagues have as well, and from students in MCPS who have very amazing concepts and ideas in initiating a system-wide composting plan within MCPS, which is actually somewhat cost-effective and will certainly take some policy adjustments. And I give a lot of credit to Chairman Rice, who met with these students years ago and planted the seeds and helped encourage them to evolve to the point where I was blown away by the presentation I received. And I know they've been working with their colleagues in the Board of Education as well as And even a meeting was convened recently by our colleague and friend Laura Charkoudian from the District 20 delegation, who's very interested in this issue as well. Could you just speak briefly about the possibilities moving forward of enhancing a composting plan specifically within MCPS, which would not just have the benefit of the composting that comes from the 16th largest school district in the country, but also the seeds that it will plant that will encourage students to have then their families compost at home?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. And it's maybe the most important thing we can talk about today. Since I've been here, and I know even before me, we've tried to build stronger relationships with the schools. Sometimes make some progress, sometimes it gets stuck, but I'm really pleased to say that we have a very strong partnership coming together. It's their hierarchy, so they want to do it their way, and I get that, but our department is standing by, ready to help. We've been participating in many of those meetings. I think, as you know, Councilman, we had a great call actually last week with the staff, not just on this issue, but on a myriad of issues, because there's no question that they're the major institutional entity in the county. So just in terms of tonnage of organics, the methane and the landfills, that comes from organic materials. So we got to get that reduced, but also we children are the future, love Whitney Houston, but also children, their parents. Where I think we're all aligned that it's our top priority, and we're really pleased to have recent breakthrough working with the schools.
We do need to teach them well and let them lead the way. So thank you very much, Director Ortiz. With that, I yield back to you, Mr. President.
Councilmember Friedson, please grab the reins.
Appreciate it. Appreciate this conversation. Obviously, there's a lot of big issues related to this, and I think it's a window into local government. When you see 10-year solid waste plan, I don't think most people would realize how important this work is and how much it impacts our environmental sustainability, our climate goals, our quality of life in Montgomery County, and actually revenue and economic development, which there is some direct connection to that as well. So it really shows the power of the seemingly mundane that is local government, but really is at the heart of what we all do. So I appreciate the MCPS composting work. That's really exciting. I hope that we can accelerate that, and glad to hear that the partnership is going well. Obviously, many of us were excited, having known Mr. Ortiz for a really long time and have watched the tremendous work in this arena in Prince George's County in particular. Was just wondering, one, if you could share with us the food waste residential pilot and how you see that working, how what the scale is of that, what the timing is of that, how residents can access that, because there's tremendous interest in that. Several of us I know have been having lots of conversation. I know Councilmember Glass and I both have gone around and discussed these issues. I've worked with you and your team on it. If you could share that.
Yeah, thank you, Councilman. I'm happy to do that. I can see the President's body language. Make it quick, Adam, so I'll do that.
Well, just for a reminder for everybody, we caught up, but not everybody knows. I know we want to get to the rent relief program now that we're back on time, because Dr. Kroll has a hard stop at noon. Please go ahead, Director Ortiz.
Okay, thank you. I'll be concise, Mr. President. Thank you for the question, Mr. Friedson. The pilot is up in 2 areas, 1,700 homes. North Bethesda, Potomac area is one. The other is Greater Silver Spring area, because those have been historically high-performing recycling areas. So it was just launched. The letter just went out. So we're really excited to see subscriptions, to the curbside program, and that contract was awarded through solicitation through Compost Crew, Councilman Glass. So great local business, and we're pleased to support it. And we look to double the program next year, and then from there begin to examine what it will take to go county-wide, which is a big deal, but it's absolutely necessary.
Absolutely. All right, I'll ask 2 questions related and together in the interest of time. One is, we've now been together here working here, from Prince George's in Montgomery for about 3 years. You did tremendous work in really going beyond just pilot programs and really changing the way that Prince George's did composting. Now that you've been here for 3 years, could you just describe what's the holdup in Montgomery County? Why aren't we doing more when it comes to composting? Why haven't we been able to take our plans and our goals to the next level into reality? And just related to that, the non-food waste piece, and from everything that I understand, is tremendously profitable. But in what I've learned and looking at the report, it doesn't seem like we're making a lot of money on that, back to the county. So if you could just explain what's going on with the non-food waste piece of the composting that we actually are doing, and then describe, based on your expertise and the time you've had now in county leadership, what are the obstacles in the way of us really taking this to the next level, which I know all of us share as a significant priority to get to our zero waste goal.
Thank you for the question. Well, to be fair, Prince George's did have a head start. They had a halfway decent director years ago who was able to get a program going, and to turn the existing yard trim composting facility into also a food scraps processing facility in partnership with Maryland Environmental Service. So there was a large facility paved, and it was pretty easy to do. It wasn't terribly expensive. The technology was pretty manageable, and it's basically a regional institutional grade facility, industrial grade facility in Prince George's. As all of you know, I think, and it's mentioned in the report, the Montgomery County is sending our food scraps down there. It would be better if we had our own capacity here, of course, transportation costs, and just being in charge. So we were looking at different options. One of the unique challenges that we have in Montgomery County is that the yard trim composting facility, which is in the Dickerson area, is subject to the Sugarloaf Agreement. I believe it predates everybody here, but it puts a cap on the amount of leaf grow that can be produced. So both counties produce leaf grow. It's a compost product, a soil amendment that can be sold and is sold and generates revenue, to your point, Councilman. But the Sugarloaf Agreement puts a cap on how many bags can be produced, and those bags are sold in Home Depot and Lowe's and Ace Hardware and places like that. It also puts a cap on the amount that can be produced, the amount that can be hauled out, or the manner in which it can be hauled out, but also a prohibition on food scraps. So that's been a tough nut to crack. We haven't quite figured it out yet. We've been in conversations with the association, but we don't quite have the path at this time. So that's a little bit of a nuance that didn't exist in Prince George's.
Appreciate that. Thanks for the explanation. Yield back, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilmember Glass.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The questions I had were asked by council members Albornoz and Friedson, but I just want to say that I did receive my letter to participate in the composting program, and I am not going to accept it. I'm going to let one of the other 1,700 residents who are interested take that, because I have my own composting bin in my own backyard. And so for those who don't have the composting bins of their own, let them participate in this program. I'm really excited about it because, for anyone who's new to this conversation, if we are going to meet our greenhouse goal reductions and face this climate challenge that we're in, the waste stream is one of the most important aspects of it. It is rarely focused on. We think about energy efficiency and vehicles and building performance, but the amount of trash we throw into our waste stream is a great contributor to our climate crisis. And if we are able to reduce the nearly 140,000 tons of food waste per year, then we're doing our part in local government. And so keep up the good work to you and your entire DEP team, and look forward to updates on how this pilot program rolls out. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Raymer.
Thank you. There's so much to say here. I know we're moving along quickly, but And this is a really important topic. And thank you, Council President, for scheduling it for full council, because I think there are some conversations about this that we need to kind of have as a body so that we're all learning together and kind of focusing together. And so, you know, just a few disparate comments. The food waste that we all put, or you know, most people put into their trash cans, takes up a huge amount of the weight of those cans and requires us to run more trucks, and it emits gases. You know, it's full of water fundamentally. Like, you know, the food you compost is really full of water, which, you know, that's, you know, gets incinerated, I guess. I don't even know how that works, but it's clearly inefficient, you know, to have in your incineration stream. And so taking food out of the waste stream can significantly reduce the waste stream and make the whole operation so much more efficient. And of course, it can be, you know, used and reused and even sold. And what is stopping us from having a curbside program is a facility. We need land. And as the department explained, we have an existing agreement with the neighborhood around the incinerator that we won't send food scraps to our compost facility. We have a compost facility. It's just for yard waste, and that's great. You know, it's amazing actually. But we have an agreement with them that we won't send food waste. We also have another piece of land nearby. It's called Plot B or something like that. They also have a veto over our using that land. So there's like a 10-acre site or an 8-acre site nearby that would be extremely useful for us to put food waste and expand our curbside program. But the Sugarloaf Civic has a veto on that, and we have to negotiate an agreement. Well, the county executive is their guy. You know, the county executive ran for office with their support. And when he, on election night, I vividly remember, he said his #1 environmental priority was shutting down the incinerator. So he needs to negotiate an agreement here. Nobody is better suited to negotiate an agreement with the Sugarloaf Civic Association so that we can have food waste composting, meet our environmental goals, and you know, move forward on this critical priority. And if you can't get to yes with the Civic Association, then, you know, I guess the county has to buy land somewhere else. And, you know, that's going to create its own issues with surrounding property owners who might not want to have, you know, a facility near them. So it requires some leadership here. And I just feel like, you know, this is something where the executive needs to lead. He needs to put some personal effort into it and get us to yes. And, you know, we're going to be stuck until we get that land, you know, to use. So that is the barrier right now to expanding further, as far as I understand. But in case I mischaracterize anything, Keith, can I just ask you, you know, did I describe that fairly, or, you know, is there something I'm missing there?
Well, I think as Mr. Ortiz mentioned, receiving capacity is really the biggest issue right now with regard to expanding our residential and commercial food scraps programs. And capacity could take the form of, you know, modifying our existing compost facility or a new facility, like you mentioned, anaerobic digestion, which is a different process where composting is aerobic. There are anaerobic processes as well that are done in places successfully that take up less space. There's pros and cons to those processes, and also exporting to nearby facilities. Hopefully with recent changes in state regulations, there will be more receiving facilities within a reasonable distance of Montgomery County. So among all those options, you know, we have a lot of food waste, as was mentioned earlier. We sort of need an all of the above approach to find space. You know, and I know Councilmember Glass has been trying to identify ways that we can use compost in the ag reserve and have receiving space there, and, you know, sort of more of a micro approach. But we're going to need a lot of different options. to come together, including continued use perhaps of the Prince George's facility. Maybe we can get marginally more reserve space there as well going forward. So it's going to take a variety of solutions, and probably more than just one, to get us the kind of space we need to divert as much as we can from our waste stream.
Right. So we need more sites. We need to use every site we can. So microsites on farms is excellent. Continuing to use Prince George's facility, necessary. But we've got to have more sites, and we've got a huge amount of land in this county, and there's no reason we can't meet this need here locally. But we've got to get focused and break through here, on some real estate issues. All right. Thank you.
Mr. President, can I just respond very briefly, just for the record? Mr. Reamer, as always, your comments are noted and appreciate your perspective. Just for the awareness of the council members, there is an anaerobic digestion facility that is being constructed in Jessup. That's closer than Prince George's. It's not owned, but we're hopeful that perhaps we can strike an agreement with them to take some of our food scraps as well and use that digestate in our leaf grow process. Another point, of course, I lost it. It was great though, but I'll circle back with you. But the we have been in discussions with Sugarloaf. I can't speak for the county executive, in all of his discussions with them, but they have expressed that when there's a clear path for closing the incinerator, they will allow us to do food scrap composting. That's the enterprise that our department has been dedicated to. We're looking to offer a solicitation in the near future to look at options, as Mr. Levchenko said, and then hopefully that will create some kind of breakthrough to be able to use the existing facility for food scraps.
Can I just ask, Director Ortiz, thank you. And we're so lucky you're here. You have tremendous experience with waste, waste management, I guess. It's one of your signature expertise areas. But the second site, so that am I correct in saying that the county entered into an agreement with the Sugarloaf Civic Association that requires their consent not only for the incinerator or the existing composting facility, which composts yard waste but not food scraps, but also a nearby piece of land that is a backup for the county's own waste disposal, and that also they have to have consent for us to use that. Is that correct?
I would ask Keith to double check me, but I do not believe that is subject to the Sugarloaf agreement. It's known as Site 2.
Yeah.
It's more than 200 acres, I believe, and it was a backup landfill in case there's an emergency or in case something with the construction of the incinerator didn't work out. So it has been permitted as a landfill, and I'll double check that.
Okay.
That with you, Councilman.
So if it's not, we could potentially use that as a composting site.
That could potentially be a site if that was the decision of the powers that be.
All right, we'll ask Keith if you could follow up. Patty, I know you're an expert on this. Anything you can share with us briefly?
No, that's true. It's permitted to be operated as a landfill. Clearly, it's not a landfill, but if we were going to use it as a composting operation, we just have to work with MDE to change the permit. So that would obviously be a public process, so anybody could have input into that. But I'm pretty sure too, the Sugarloaf Citizens Association does not have a lock on whether that could go or not.
So they do have an agreement with us about the existing composting facility, which is yard waste but not food scraps. But they do not have a veto over Site 2, which is a 200-acre facility that for us is a backup disposal site, but we could repurpose it, at least part of it, for composting if we want to. Okay.
Just the only thing I would add is the reason we have that backup site is because in working with the state, I think there was concern about putting all your eggs in one basket. With the resource recovery facility when it opened in the 90s. So the Site 2 is a backup to that. You could make the same argument going forward if you continue with the resource recovery facility, or if you do out of county landfilling, there can always be issues with an out of county landfilling process, and the state may still really strongly encourage us to have in county backup for that. So site 2 may still be needed as it is now, or much of it. But once again, I think you raise a good point that site 2 is a very important piece of all this puzzle and needs to be looked at in all the ways it could be used.
Great. I think, folks, we're going to have to move from a 10-year plan to a current emergency if we're not going to have the opportunity to deal with our current emergency if we don't end the discussion of the 10-year plan. So anyway, we're going to come back to this weighty topic. Today is just a work session. Keith, if you could let us know when we're going to
the intent today was if the council was ready to take a straw vote, and then we would bring it back formally with a resolution for consent action. Now, once again, if the council's not ready for that, let me know, and we'll bring it back for a final, for another work session action. But we were hoping you could get to straw vote today.
Sure. Is that fine with everybody? All those in favor of tentatively of the 10-year plan, please raise your hand. Great. That is unanimous. Okay.
So we will bring that back. I still have to work with DEP on final language in the plan to get that, get all the, I's and T's crossed. And
we understand.
Go forward.
Yep. Great. Thank you, Keith. Thanks, everybody. Okay. Is Dr. Kroll here? Probably by now. There we go. Dr. Kroll, hi. Good morning. Item 4.5. I understand you had a hard stop at 12. Is that still the case?
It is, yes.
Great. Okay. So if we could receive a very quick progress report on the COVID-19 rent relief program expenditures of the Treasury funds. We're going to have a broader update, colleagues, on October 5th, but I figured given the urgency of this issue, we should have a quick update today since we won't be able to for another couple weeks. Many of our residents obviously are facing rental debt and living in fear of evictions. If you could update us on the numbers, Dr. Kroll, and the impending deadline.
I'm going to turn this over to Amanda Harris, who's our Chief for Services to End and Prevent Homelessness, who's just coming back, but do want to say that we are confident that we're going to meet the deadlines that we're required to meet on this. But more importantly, we will continue to work to make sure that folks who are facing evictions have their needs addressed and do everything we can to make sure that they do not face eviction unnecessarily and give them every opportunity to apply for funding. We've done that, and that's been our priority, and we'll continue to make that our priority. You'll hear a little bit from Amanda of just the numbers, but also the things we are doing to make sure how we've hit our targets and to make sure that we're going to continue to get money out faster and hopefully through different vehicles, commitment letters to tenants, advanced payments to landlords rather, and commitment letters to landlords as well. So I'll stay with you as long as I can if there are any questions for me, but I do want to just go ahead and turn it over to Amanda just in the interest of time.
Great. Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I do have a few slides. Let me just pull up my screen. All right, y'all see that? Okay, so as of today, we have spent $28.6 million of the $59 million. That includes both the direct ERAP funding from the federal government and the $28 million in ERAP from the state. Altogether, we are at 75% of the 65% target. I will talk a little bit later about the breakdown between where we're at and hitting our target for direct and where we're at hitting the target for state. You will see that we did have a couple slow weeks, but we're back on track. We hit over 2 million last week, so we're feeling good about that. More than 200 households were served. Our all-time spending is at 41.5. This slide just shows you kind of the demographics of who we're serving. So we are using an equity framework. That's why we're prioritizing households that have been unemployed for more than 90 days, at or below 50% AMI. You'll see that The majority of households are under 30% AMI, predominantly people of color. More than 90% of the households are people of color, and about half are coming from those high need census tracts as determined by our Homeless Prevention Index. Just briefly on the evictions, we are continuing to receive eviction data from the Sheriff's Office of any new evictions that have been scheduled, and that number remains low. It's averaging less than 15 new evictions scheduled each week. So we are confident that we're able to stay ahead of it and be able to reach those households before they actually get evicted. I want to just continue to point out that less than 8% of filings actually result in an eviction. So although there's been a lot of filings, most situations are able to be resolved. Okay, so yes.
Ms. Harris, that doesn't count self-evictions, correct?
That does not. We have,
right. Most landlords would say about 70% of people just disappear.
Yes.
In my experience.
Yes, that is definitely true. There are a lot more informal. Yep.
Right.
Yep. That happens. We are trying to prevent that and trying to reach people sooner. We are able to pay for relocation assistance. So if a household has already vacated the unit, we can set them up in their new unit. We can pay security deposit and 3 months of prospective rent. The new Treasury guidelines also allow us to pay past arrears, even if the household has already left the unit. Previously, the guidance was you could not do that if they had already vacated, but now the Treasury does allow that. It's a little complicated, and we did ask Treasury for guidance. I don't know what the status of that is. I'm just returning from vacation. Today's my first day back, so I'll have to get that information for you. But here, I think that this slide really tells you what you want to know. So for the direct ERAP expenditures, we have actually already hit our 65% target. So we're at 102% of that 65% target. For the state, we have not reached the 65%. We're at $8 million in current spending with the state, which is about 44% of the target. Like all the jurisdictions in the state, we did want to make sure that we spent that direct ERAP funding first, because that posed the greatest risk of us losing the second round of the ERA funds. So we wanted to make sure that we did meet that federal deadline first. And then over here, on the other side of the slide, you'll see we are contributing the most to the state funding. So I feel, although there is still a risk that we could lose state funding, I am less concerned about that given our significant contribution to their goal. You'll see Montgomery County, this is as of July, the end of July, so it's even higher now, but we were at 6 million, and the closest to that was their state program, which was at 2.3 million. So that's that.
Okay.
Yep. Yes.
How much longer is the presentation? I just want to make sure we get to council members' questions, since this is going to have to be so very brief.
Yep, just one more slide.
Okay.
That's it. So just quickly, these are our plans over the next 90 days. Some of them will happen over the next 2 weeks. We can do commitment letters, so that will help us reach our target. We just have to obligate the funds. So we have connected with a number of properties. We will be able to encumber an additional almost 3 million from those properties by the end of this week. So that will help us reach our goal. We're continuing to outreach to other properties to get their rent logs so that we can do more commitment letters. We are also working on advance payments. That's a little more complicated and will take some more time, but we are committed to doing that. And then we are adding some additional staffing, and then we'll continue to prioritize those with red and whites. And now I'm happy to take any questions.
Great, thanks. Do you know how much of our funds are being spent on administrative costs?
10% of the funds. So we have maxed out what we can spend on administrative costs, and the rest is all going to
up to the federal guidelines. You're sure we're not
Correct.
exceeding 10%?
We are not. I don't believe so.
Do you know how many applications have been waiting for more than a month?
I don't know how many, but I can tell you that we have completely closed out 50% of our applications, and another 30% are actively with a caseworker.
Many of our tenant advocates have urged the creation of an eviction crisis team with a direct line to the county executive to troubleshoot and break log jams within agencies. That hasn't been done yet, right? And if not, why not? What are your views on it?
I'm not sure exactly what that would look like. We do, when we get the list from the sheriff's office, we are working with our housing counseling agencies through DHCA. We share that list of the folks that are scheduled for eviction. They go out and knock on the doors and make sure that they're aware of the program, help them apply. If they have already applied, we pull those and we process those as quickly as possible. So I'm not sure what else.
You haven't heard of this proposal at all?
I've been gone for 2 weeks.
Okay,
So,
fair enough.
And I will say I have not heard of it either. This is the first time I've heard of something like that as well.
Okay, this is the Renters Alliance. I know has mentioned it to me for months, and said that they've been frustrated not getting. Maybe they've been talking to DHCA and not you all, but I would think they'd be talking to you all. Do you? I appreciate the focus on renters that have already been served notice to appear in eviction court. Are you working with renters? To what extent are you working with renters before things get that dire?
We have been all along working with renters who, at any point along the continuum, when they go to court, they've been encouraged to reach out through staff that are in court and available to help them with that process, as well as obviously trying to let people know through tenants, through landlords, and through all of the various media outlets that this is a resource that's available to them now, so they don't have to tell you.
Thanks. You are working with landlords, with individuals, or are you getting the list of tenants facing eviction from landlords?
we're not getting it from the landlord, we're getting it directly from sheriff's office.
From the sheriff's office, okay.
Yeah.
I can follow up on this. I brought this up with the county executive and DHCA, but Baltimore County has a very successful program for months now, working with landlords to batch the lists of tenants facing evictions. It's been widely covered in the media. I brought it to the county executive's attention and the director of DHCA's attention in April. Baltimore County's prevented 1,000 evictions so far this way, and so far, to my knowledge, there's been no interest in setting up that program here, working with United Way of Central Maryland. Is that still the case?
So we are the issue of a batch program. I think the issue of commitment letters that we now have capacity to do through the state, from Treasury, gives us an opportunity to do that. And they have been some landlords who have sent us lists of tenants who are facing arrears. And we're prepared and working on sending out commitment letters to them. Basically says we will cover initially, I think, 50% of the arrearages until we have a chance to walk through the numbers and verify the tenants.
Right. The nice thing in Baltimore County is the landlords are only getting a partial payment, so they're contributing to the eviction avoidance as well. Sorry, Ms. Harris.
Yeah, I mean, landlords have always had the ability to batch applications. They have been able to do this since day one.
Sure. My question is the county actually reaching out to them to actually do that?
Yeah. Yes. We have done lots of outreach to them. We have worked very closely with MHA. We have worked with some of the other properties that have very high rates of eviction. Some of those properties are actually going to get commitment letters. So we are doing that. I think maybe it doesn't look exactly the same as it does in Baltimore or Prince George's, but we're doing very similar work.
Okay, I'll follow up with you. I've gotten a different story from I got that answer from the county executive back then, and I've gotten different stories from the landlord. Let me just, I want to move on though. So Councilmember Glass.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I appreciate you elevating this conversation to the full council so that not only are we brought up to speed, but for those who are following this and are anxious about it and helping people who are at risk of losing their home, that everybody has all of the information that they need, or at least that can be answered. So it was over a year ago when I led the first special appropriation for what was then a very modest $2 million to start the rental assistance program. And I appreciate the entire council being supportive of that appropriation because we knew that the public health crisis that was upon us could very easily turn into a housing crisis, and we wanted to stop it as quickly as possible. And here we are nearly 18 months later trying to figure out how to stem the number of evictions and keep people safely in their home, which is the safest place to be during a health pandemic. And while we have prevented a looming number of tenants from being evicted during the middle of the pandemic, there is a lot more that we know we need to do. And getting the $20 million in federal assistance out to constituents who need it, we've established that, and closely coordinating with the sheriff's office, as has just been alluded to. That is how we are doing our best to stem these evictions. And that's the good news. But there's still more work that we need to do. And quite frankly, the communication that I receive echoes a lot of confusion. And quite frankly, some people have been dealing with chaos in their own homes and with loved ones and family members trying to figure out the status of their rental applications. Because we know that the rollout of these funds have been quite slow. And ever since the beginning of the pandemic, my office, and I know all of our offices, have been contacted by people who are afraid of becoming homeless and afraid of evictions, and they just don't know where to turn. And so first and foremost, I think we need to improve our communication and get these funds out as quickly as possible. And I just have a few quick questions along those lines. I know that the staff packet in advance of today's conversation, some of that data has been updated by Mrs. Harris's presentation. And so I think if I took the correct notes, I see that $28.6 million has been spent according to Ms. Harris's presentation. And so I want to know how many applications have been responded to, how many of them have been accepted. I've heard that some have been denied. And so can you just explain that, some of those statistics for us all to understand?
Yes, I can. I don't have the updated stats right in front of me, but it's less than, I think it's definitely less than 10% have been denied. And I think it might be closer to 5% that have been denied. And like I said, 50% of the applications have been completely closed out and processed, and another 30% are with a caseworker.
And can you share with us what would deem an application to be denied or rejected?
Sure. So most of the reasons that people are denied is because we can't get in touch with them. They haven't responded. Or we also are getting people that are applying that are not actual residents. They're applying from other Montgomery counties across the country. But those are the primary reasons. Some over income.
Got it. Okay. Part of the app, for those who are able to channel the application process and are responsive to the back and forth, and there's a lot of back and forth communication, they're not able to see the status of their applications, aside from just seeing, quote unquote, processing. And I think that process needs to be improved so that people know where they are in the queue. And the question therein would be, what is the average response time for somebody who applies? And as we've been having these conversations, have you found any efficiencies and reduction of steps so that people can get their rental support quicker?
So, Councilmember, I'll let Amanda answer the question about efficiencies, but we'll say that I've asked our analytics team to do two things for us. One is to begin to take a look at the data now that we have some, to try to get a sense of what the average response times are and what the variables are that contribute to the speed or the slowness of the processing. The other thing I've asked for them to do is to develop an email notification system that draws on the data in the existing data system that we use, and will send automatic updates to folks to let them know if we can't let them know where they are in the process, to let them know that they have not been forgotten and that their application is still in process and that it is being worked on. So that, because in much the way we ended up doing something similar with testing and vaccination to give folks an update on where they were and what the status was in the process. So we're trying to do something, replicate that for this system.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, they can actually check their status. I think the problem is that people get frustrated when their status doesn't change. There are, I believe, 6 different stages, and they can check that. And so just like Dr. Kroll was speaking to, is we want to be able to send out mass communication to let people know you are still in the queue. We still are working with you. We haven't forgotten about you. Our standard message is, as long as your application is not denied, we're going to get to you. And even if you have been denied, you can always appeal. But we have been able to find some efficiencies, and that's mostly working with the landlords. So we've asked landlords, we do ask if we're paying more than $12,000 that the landlord agrees to write off 10% of the arrears. And we've gotten from a number of landlords a blanket commitment to do that for any tenant that has applied. And that has really sped up the process. So we're continuing to do that outreach to landlords to get those that commitment to write off that 10%, because a lot of it's not just back and forth with the tenant, it's also back and forth with the landlords. We have also gotten to a place where we can assign the applications to a caseworker based on location, so that you're not having to deal with 6 different caseworkers and 1 property manager. So we have been able to do that. We have always accepted self-certification, so that definitely helps speed up the process.
Well, I appreciate those responses, and I think those are the types of course corrections that we need to take at this point, right? We were trying to do this as quickly as possible in the middle of the pandemic, building the plane as we were trying to fly it. And I understand that that is an issue nationally, not just for us, but now that we know what the problem is and we've been staffing up, I think those types of course corrections are much needed. Last question, but I think you've answered it from President Hucker's question. 10% of the funds, no more than 10% can be used for administration. And so is that am I understanding it that we cannot staff up anymore, or do we have a capacity to staff up more to get more of these funds out quickly?
We have continued to staff beyond the 10%. So we use the 10% that we're allowed to under the federal, but we have continued to staff up using county resources and other resources.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Let's continue staffing up and doing whatever we have to do on the administrative end to make sure that these funds get out there, because my office, all of our offices, are inundated by people who are concerned. And it's not only the online process of trying to figure out where they are in the queue, but for people who are just concerned and fearful of being evicted from their home. We are the front line in local government, and we have to do everything we can to comfort them and help them, especially during this pandemic. So thank you for this update, and we'll continue this conversation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Novato.
Thank you very much for this update. A lot of the questions I had, I know already have been discussed. I guess the only thing I will add, just for clarity, in terms of the additional staffing and or enhancing the online process, where are we with that? Are there specific plans that are being considered? Will the council be receiving any particular requests or anything like that? Just to understand what is the plan going forward. As we are trying to address these issues, I know Councilmember Jawanda, for example, has bills to address the issues of rent increases, et cetera. Equally important is the issue of how are we making sure that the funds are being distributed as soon as possible, and that we also evaluate whether we need to step in and even put more assistance out there, because obviously the quicker, the faster that we're able to intercept, the more we avert a much more exacerbated crisis. So just very quickly, so are there particular plans for additional staffing beyond what Dr. Kroll, you said you've already done, and also any revamping of the technology online process, and also how are we incorporating all of those best practices that we have already utilized in order to get our vaccination rates up and things like that?
Sure. So as I mentioned, we are adding 6 additional staff members. We have also authorized overtime for existing staff. I will just say that adding more brokers is not always enough because people need to be managed. We have to have oversight, and our supervisors and our managers are maxed out. They're supervising 30, 40 people, which is a lot. So we have to find that balance of how can we use existing staff and give them overtime, and then also add some additional workers. As far as the technology changes, we are working on doing those mass communications. We are somewhat limited with the software that we have. Uncork allows us to do some things and doesn't allow us to do others. So if there are specific issues or concerns, we can always look at that and see if it's possible with the existing system.
Thank you. I will just offer, and I know Ms. Harris, you're doing extraordinary work there, and you're doing whatever you can with the capacity that you have. But this is a crisis, and so we have to respond the same way that we have in the past, which means that we're going to have to be creative, innovative, and make sure that we're there on the ground, and that whatever technology enhancement we might need, which has to be coupled with human capital, because there are many people out there who are not, using technology that great, that we do that. And so I know, Mr. President, you said you have, you wanted to schedule something a little more robust. I will absolutely like to hear what are those sort of outside the box approaches that we will incorporate, just as I said, as we have done thus far with other areas during this pandemic. Because again, the not doing that will mean that we're going to have to be faced with a crisis of extraordinary proportions. I don't have to remind ourselves that there are many families out there who don't even interface with our county government, who are right now in dire needs. And so inevitably, we're going to have to respond to that additional, layer. So I would very much like to hear what is the plan specifically outside of whatever limitations. This is what we've done up until now, has been to troubleshoot and make sure that the barriers that we find, that we go and we figure them out. That's what we have to do at this particular moment as well, especially as we're getting into the colder months. And I hope then, I respectfully request that for the next session that we have some very specific things to react to in order for us to also be partners in supporting this process.
Agreed, thanks. So the broader update on both rental assistance and eviction prevention is scheduled currently for October 5th. Council Member Joando.
Thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Kroll, you have to go.
Thank you. I'm gonna have to sign off, but I just wanted to say thank you all for taking the time to let us give you an update on this. Just a quick observation that everything that we have done in the last 20 months has been outside the box, including this initiative. This didn't exist, and the processes didn't exist, and all the things that are in place now didn't exist as little as 6-8 months ago. So we're constantly doing that. So happy to have a conversation about what else we can do. I think one of you made a comment that this is always about building a plane while we're flying it, but always trying to figure out how do we improve it, how do we make it better, how do we make it faster. We have some thoughts around that, obviously, and we'll be continuing to work on that. And welcome some other ideas about how that might work, how we might make it work better. The housing crisis is something that we had long before the pandemic, and the pandemic has made it blatantly obvious that we have a housing crisis, and that is not going to get solved by ERAP. We can help to try to bail people out of that. We can save them from eviction. But this housing crisis is an old thing for us, and something that we really have to tackle in some more structural and fundamental ways, I think. And I'm living for the moment when we can have that conversation as well about what the bigger fixes are going to be to stop us from having people at risk of being evicted from their homes and that, I will say thank you all.
If you could wait 30 seconds just before you go, Dr. Kroll. Obviously, we've got to address the longer systemic issues, of course, and we're doing that in a lot of different ways. We have a lot of proposals out there. On the technology front, I just wanted you to hear this, like the passport process, and you can use third-party vendors like FedEx, and they track your where you are in the process. There's technology that accompanies those processes if you get an expedited passport that will automatically update people, and there's no reason we probably should have had it before the pandemic. So it's not blame. This is just investing in that type of technology for now and the future. Any future crisis of being, is something I think we should look into as a county, and it would have more applicability for any sort of technological interface that a resident would have with the county. I just think that's something with Gail Roper and, like with you in HHS, that we just need to have a broader discussion about how do we improve the technology interfaces that the public has, particularly when they're applying for, life-giving assistance. And I bring that one up just as an example. I'm not saying that's the best or the only, but I think to Councilmember Navarro's point, there's some things out there that we need to be looking into that can help with that. It sounds like with the automated email, that's a great example, but I think there are other things out there that could go straight to text message or the WhatsApp, and we should just be looking into those types of processes.
I should have said automated email, but automated email in my head automatically includes text as well. So, but I think both you and Councilmember Navarro have made good points about finding new ways to innovate and come up with some new strategies. So,
awesome. Thank you.
Do that. Thank you. And I'm going to say goodbye to you all now. Thank you.
Got it.
Thanks, Dr. Kroll.
It's in your hands now, Amanda, Ms. Harris. So just a couple of quick questions. Are late fees being paid? And as part, they're not, correct? I just want to get that clear. As part, so if the landlord agrees, there's no late fees included, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And you're saying you're asking for 10% in some, to be cut off the top in some of these batched ones, or is that just a general rule, or how,
Yeah, so that's a general rule. So for households that are below 30% AMI, we have no cap on the amount of assistance. However, if it's over 12,000, we do require that the landlord agrees to write off 10%.
So that kicks in at the 12,000 threshold. So below 12,000, it's the full amount, whatever the arrears are, whatever that covers. Okay, for that.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And how many total applications have we received so far?
One second, let me pull that up. Oh. We have received, it's not on this, 8,600.
Now, is that correct number? Because I've heard that it's much higher than that, and that's the number. Is there some discrepancy between that number and what we've actually received? Is that processed or that we're aware of, or what? Because I've heard a much higher number from other folks, and so is that the correct number?
I think so. I will have to just double check. I'm sorry, I didn't prepare these slides. So I think that number includes all the deduplicated ones. So we've gotten a lot of people that have applied multiple times.
Okay, so we could have more than 15,000, but some are duplicated.
There's a lot of duplicates. Yes.
I heard a number closer to 15,000 as far as raw application, but you're saying the dedupe number is closer to 8,000.
Correct.
Okay. We have 59 million. You've given out 28 million. I'm not a mathematician, but it seems like if the average thing is $10,000, the award, that we don't have enough money. Or do we? Am I doing my math wrong?
We still have it. We have the second round of the ERA funds. So I think it's another 30 million in the ERA 2. So we still do have enough funds.
And and then we also know that, I've heard the stat that 2/3 of the people who are facing eviction, for example, haven't applied, for the funds, which into points that have been made earlier, there's many people out there that haven't applied. So what are we doing? Can you give us a sense of the relative need? And do you think if and when are we going to need to appropriate additional dollars, or do you feel like we're in a good place right now? And then how does that factor into the outreach, knowing that they're the people who are most in need, the 2/3 of them aren't even applying when you find out from the courthouse or the sheriff that they are facing eviction? Because that number really bothers me. It scares me a lot that number is that high.
Yeah, that's a really hard question to answer. We don't have enough money to help everyone that is behind. We don't. I can guarantee that. That's why we have prioritized, and we prioritize households that we thought were most at risk. We are doing extensive outreach through the housing counseling agencies that have the contract with DHCA to reach out to those households that haven't applied. We are seeing an increase. So when we first started getting the sheriff's data, only about 20% of the folks on the list had actually had an application, and now that's about 40%. So I think our efforts are working, but there's still more to do.
And we should all still feel comfortable saying apply, apply, apply. There's funds for you. There's funds for you. That's what we've all been doing. And I think none of us, if you get to the point of that tipping point, I think, as we're considering how to spend the rest of the federal dollars, this is obviously top of the list for many of us. So for everybody, I would say. All right, last question. When we engage with someone who's facing eviction, are we letting them know their rights around the currently in place cap on rental increases? Are we giving them that information and making sure that they know? Hopefully we will extend that, but they're being made aware of that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Thank you for all your work. I know it's hard and you've made progress. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just piggyback on the outreach question? Is the outreach all through the nonprofit partners you mentioned, or I'm just thinking back to under County Executive Leggett, when we passed the renters' rights bill, there was a very broad, high-profile engagement campaign, as you remember, that involved other agencies as well. We saw bus shelter ads and posters on buses and flyers in apartment building lobbies, and internet ads and radio ads. I haven't seen that for rent relief.
We have done some of that. Most of the outreach efforts, it is being handled. DHCA is the lead on that, so they're taking the lead on those efforts. So they would be better equipped to address exactly what they have done. But we have also worked with our other partner agencies, the minority health initiatives, through the regional service directors. The state is also doing some outreach, so they are doing mailings to anyone that has a court filing, and they are doing a big marketing campaign. I don't know the status of that right now, but they are trying to spread the word as well.
Okay. So you don't know of any bus ads or radio ads or anything like that, though? I can follow up with the HCA.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Okay. Thanks. Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you. Appreciate this conversation. It's obviously critical for so many residents in our community. And Ms. Harris, I appreciate the progress that's been made. This is not easy. None of us are happy with how long it takes to process these applications, how complicated they can be, but appreciate all the effort that you have taken to continuously try to improve this process. I did want to echo the comments made before on the technology. It is disheartening to hear you mention that there are limitations with what you can do and who you can reach based on the technology that we have and the systems that we have in place. I just want to reiterate to you and to everybody across county government that we have said before, we will say again and continue to repeat here that we are interested, willing, anxious to provide whatever resources are needed to be able to put in place all the technology that we can to make sure that we're best reaching our residents and that we are doing the most cutting edge processes in order to make sure that residents are aware of how these things work. So I hope that we can have that follow-up conversation. I know it's been said before, I don't want to belabor it too much, but there's absolutely no reason why we shouldn't have the best technology, the best systems in place to be able to reach the most amount of people in their communities in their language, on their terms, at a time that is convenient and in a way that is appropriate for them. That's not on you, that's on us and on everybody around us to be able to do it, but we absolutely have to get that right. So please let us know privately, publicly, and everything in between. If there is a better way to do this that you hear from any other colleague anywhere else in the country, we have to be doing that here, and we should be, making that happen yesterday.
Sure, we will certainly do that. I will just say that the system that we have now is a vast improvement over the previous seamless docs that we were using for the first round of COVID rent relief. We have professional translation. People can complete the whole application in their native language. It does allow people to check their status. So it is not perfect, but it is definitely much better than what we had before. And we will continue to make tweaks along the way. I also just want to say that changing to a different system at this point in the game is going to slow everything down. We have applications in this system. There might be something better out there, but in order to make that shift, then we would have to stop everything that we're doing and make that transition. So there would be a break or a gap in being able to process applications. So we have to weigh the benefits of doing that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I just think that you need help and you need the county executive and others who can look at what you're doing, since you are in the weeds, and somebody on the technology side to bring those together to be able to think ahead to the next program that happens. You're too busy trying to get out this rental relief money and to run the process that you're in, but we need some help for you and leadership in bringing through all the different agencies in county government to look ahead to what the next program, the next process will be, and how we move forward in this crisis. I appreciate that. Just wanted to quickly, related to the amount of funding that we have, the money that we're talking about now is the ERA 1 funding. That's the 70% threshold that we've met. 65% was the minimum before, that we would risk losing funds. Is that all the funding for rental relief that we currently have in the county? Are there additional funds that have not been able to be deployed through other programs and processes?
We have our existing funding. So we had a housing stability services, which has always provided eviction prevention, which we haven't used much of that because we've had all this COVID money. So there is still funding there. We have received a portion of the EAR 2. I don't know off the top of my head exactly how much that is, but we have received some of that. And I think once we hit the end of September, we should be able to request the additional EAR 2 funds. And then I think there may be just a little bit of the CRF funds available as well. Spent the majority of it, but there's a little bit left.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I think it would be helpful when we have these conversations that we include the full breadth of rental relief. Sure. And how much money is available in each of those. I think it will give us a better sense of where we are and what the funding needs are. And so I just, it's not just a request of you, but a request of the council president and council staff. I think that broader set of information would be helpful. I know obviously we have an acute deadline on September 30th, so we're really focused on that. But I think as we make our funding decisions and determine where we are in getting funding out to residents who desperately need it, we need to have the full breadth of information on that. So hope when we reconvene on October the 5th and have any reports subsequent to this that we include that. Just wanted to, what's the average time currently of processing? Do we keep that number?
I don't have that number because there's so many different factors because of our prioritization process, because we are trying to use an equity framework. We are trying to do the analysis to look at what's the average processing time if you don't fall into any of the priorities. What's the average processing time if you fall into 2 of the priority areas? But I don't have that yet. We will have that available by the October session.
Okay, great. Yeah, it'd be helpful for us to know from a staffing perspective of how we're doing and what we need to improve on. So that would be helpful. Related to that, the 10% administrative cap that we had talked about earlier. I'm not sure I quite understood. Council President Hucker and Councilmember Klaas both asked about this, but we've reached the 10%, meaning we've expended those funds already, and so we no longer can spend any funds out of the ERA 1 funds that we receive on staffing, and so now the additional staff that you mentioned and Dr. Kroll mentioned, adding 6 members, that's coming out of county resources, or are you projected to hit the 10% number? Haven't hit it yet, but that's what you expect in order to get out these funds, or could you just explain that?
Sure, that's what we've encumbered through our broker contract. So we've encumbered 10% of the administrative funds for the staff that we have. So we have staffing through the end of the fiscal year. That's how much we booked. And then the additional staffing, we are using other funding to pay for that staff. I don't know exactly which pot of money that is coming from. It may be CRF, it may be county funds. I'd have to get back to you on the answer to that.
Yeah, it seems to me that is the discrepancy that I think council members are confused by, and what we've heard of, the cost of administration. So if you could provide us with that information of the total administrative costs, both in the encumbered 10% that you mentioned through the fiscal year, and then the cost of the additional 6, and any other related costs, and where the revenue sources are, whether it's CRF or the general fund, to the department. I think that would be very helpful.
Sure, will do.
Appreciate it. Thank you. With that, I will yield back and just express my appreciation again for all of your hard work and efforts. I know it's around the clock effort, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you for scheduling this as well. And Ms. Harris and Dr. Kroll, though he's not here at this moment, thank you very, very much for what you're doing. I know that this is a difficult job, and you certainly have passion to make certain that people who are facing perhaps one of the greatest crises that they're going to be facing are getting the information and the dollars necessary as quickly as possible. So I appreciate that. Well, I'm touching on the whole concern about the technology, and if the technology works, that would be fabulous. Though sometimes, even if FedEx and those who do a wonderful job, you can check their sites and they say, we'll get that package to you eventually. They don't always update it as quickly as they can. The Postal Service as well. So I don't know as much as if that would be helpful. That's terrific. However, we also have people who are in this situation who don't have technology. So we have to be able to figure what they can be doing as well, and how we can communicate with them. And the whole idea about the administrative costs, and that it can be 10%, in one breath, I appreciate that. I understand that the money that will be going, that we have, should be going to the people that need it. But in the other breath, we're saying, look, we want this to be handed out faster and faster and faster, which we do. But that takes administrative costs. So, that puts us in a very difficult position. Do you know of any place that has done a better job or a faster job than we are doing at this point? I mean, I know that in the industry, there's always publications, etc. Are you aware of some other group or some other government that has figured out a better or a faster system?
Virginia is doing a great job statewide. I don't know what their demographics look like, though. They're doing a good job of getting the money out the door quickly. I don't know if they're doing a good job meeting the needs. So, and I'm not saying that they're not. I don't know that.
I appreciate that. I do.
Yeah. And Prince George's is a little ahead of us, but they started early. They started before us. They didn't wait for the updated guidance. We regularly communicate with them. We're regularly in communication with the other jurisdictions in Maryland. This is incredibly difficult work, and we are all figuring it out. And there's the National Low Income Housing Coalition put out a map of all the different states and where each state is as far as spending. And only Texas and Virginia have spent almost 50% of their funds, and the rest of the country has not. And the vast majority of the country has spent less than 10% of their ERAP funds. So I think that we're doing a decent job. Doesn't mean that we can't go faster and that we shouldn't strive to be better, but I feel pretty good about where we're at and that we are meeting the needs. And we're not seeing a huge increase in homelessness. And that's the point of this program, is to prevent evictions and to prevent people from becoming homeless. And we're actually seeing a decline in the number of people experiencing homelessness. So if I use that as a measure of success, I think we're doing a pretty good job.
Well, and I thank you, but in this type of situation, it's like when someone has to call an ambulance. Every second seems like a month, and I appreciate that. I mean, you can't get there fast enough. So if we can communicate better and be helpful in that way, and to others' points, if you need more resources, we have to figure out how we can get you the resources so that you can get the public the money that they need. So thank you very much for all that you do. I yield back, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Rice.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to try and be brief. Ms. Harris, again, thank you for all that you and the department continue to do to try and protect folks. Look, my question is regarding follow-up. So obviously we're providing help and assistance to those who may need it. The concern is that some of those issues that those folks are experiencing may not go away. And so you had mentioned before about your caseloads and typically being about 30 people. Is that a rotating basis? How long are these managers staying with these clients once they receive financial assistance from us to ensure that they don't fall back into the same challenges that they face getting into this situation to begin with?
Yeah, so when I was talking about the 30 or 40, that's the number of staff that are reporting to each supervisor. So it's not the caseload. The caseloads are actually much higher than that. Okay. I will be honest, because we are trying to move quickly. We're not doing a lot of continuing case management with these households. We do provide resources. We let them know what's available. We obviously take the time on the front end to listen to their story, to have the empathy, to make sure that we are trying to connect them, but we don't have the bandwidth to be able to do any kind of continuing case management like we would in a regular eviction prevention program.
Right. And I think that's one of the things that's key, is that normally in our normal programs, we provide that service. And I know that's something that's kind of a benchmark in terms of best practices for continuing to have eviction protection and prevention. And so from that perspective, it's just something we're going to have to watch. It could be something that colleagues, we may need to continue to advocate at both the state and federal level for additional dollars to actually do the follow-up work, because that's a key and core tenet of what it is. Yeah, it's one thing to just stop the eviction process and get folks back on track for today, but 3 months from now, 4 months from now is when oftentimes those folks still, unfortunately, fall back into the same challenges they had before. And that's a core tenet of our normal eviction prevention process that we do such a great job of. I'm so proud of us on, but one in which I think we're losing with results to how we're trying to quickly react to COVID. And so it may be something that, again, from a bandwidth perspective, as you said, Ms. Harris, we may look at additional funding or staffing to help support that. So just wanted to flag that for us, but thank you very much for all of your great work.
Okay, I don't see any other requests to
Mr. Council President, I've been in the queue.
Oh, Council Vice President, beg your pardon.
Thanks. So just a couple points. And thank you, Ms. Harris and Ms. Branda. I know you guys have been working around the clock since the beginning, and I know this is probably your first time off in probably about 2 years. And obviously it's been an overwhelming time, to say the least. Just for context, I know that most of the guidance is issued by Treasury, correct? The county is not responsible for the requirements that have been established, and the Treasury Department has shifted those requirements over time since the beginning of the program. Is that also accurate?
That is correct. They have changed their guidance 6 times. And I will also note that they don't actually have a program guide. They are only doing this through FAQs, which is highly unusual for a federal program.
And there are frequent audits as well of our system and all systems, which we have to be compliant with as well. So to pick up on Councilmember Rice's point, I think there's an opportunity for us to work with our federal delegation in urging our partners at the Treasury Department at the federal level to streamline and make things easier. We've done it with vaccinations. There's plenty of precedents here in order for this to be easier on the back end for our users. We're all feeling the urgency. The calls we're all getting are just heartbreaking, and we've all been referring those calls to you diligently, and I appreciate you following up on those. I'll just make 2 final points as we wrap up, and we'll have a more expansive session in 2 weeks. The first is Council Members Rice, Navarro, and Reamer in their first term went to bat for me as the director of the Recreation Department when we expanded the Excel Beyond the Bell program and TeenWorks program and had really just maxed out the supervisory capacity. They helped fund more supervisors. And so don't be afraid, Ms. Harris, to go big in terms of the ask, because there are system building opportunities here that once we've established better innovation and technology will put us in a better position moving forward from an infrastructure standpoint. The final point that I'd like to make for now is that I know there's also been tremendous strides in ensuring the cultural competency of the call takers. And at least initially within the first few months of the program, there was an overwhelming number of people applying that had English as a second language. I know Councilmember Navarro and I and all of my colleagues have worked diligently on ensuring cultural competency, both in communication, but also in customer service across the board. As part of that ask, I think it's important for us to focus on those areas as well. And we can expand upon that in the efforts that are currently underway, largely through partnerships that have been quite successful, that I think are helping contribute to some of the success as well. So I look forward to the more expansive conversation on October 5th. I know that you were thrown in here, and I appreciate your responses, and they speak to the diligence by which and the urgency we're all feeling at the moment. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Council Vice President. Sorry, I missed you earlier. My bad. I don't see any other requests to speak. So I think we can adjourn till 1:30. Thanks, Ms. Harris, for joining us. Thanks for all your good work.
Thank you.
Aren't you going to do?
Oh, beg your pardon. Yep. Sorry, you're right. It's been a full morning. We have to take up the consent calendar next. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar? Thank you, Councilmember Katz and Councilmember Rice seconds. All those in favor of the consent calendar, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Scroll too far down. That is unanimous, I think.
Among those present.
Among those
Yes.
present.
I'm present and I vote aye. I don't know if someone else
Gotcha.
dropped out.
Councilmember Navarro, anybody else? Okay, among those present. Okay, now we can recess till 1:30. Thank you, everybody.
I like those parting words of advice.